Tonight, we're exploring the complete story of Ho-Oh and Lugia, the legendary birds that shaped every region. This is a fascinating topic, but I'll keep my narration calm to ensure you can still drift off to sleep. Thank you to those of you who've been joining us consistently. If you're falling asleep with us tonight, let in the comments how many nights in a row you've been here. And if this is your first night, just comment night 1. Now back to the video. High above the clouds of the Johto region, where the air grows thin and the light of the sun scatters into a spectrum of impossible colours, a shadow glides with the grace of 1,000 years. It is a creature of myth, a phoenix of gold and crimson that carries the very essence of the rainbow upon its wings. This is Ho-Oh, the guardian of the skies and the bringer of eternal happiness. But deep beneath the churning waves of the Whirl Islands, far removed from the warmth of the sun, another presence waits in the crushing silence of the abyss. It is a titan of silver and shadow, a guardian whose very breath can stir the tides and whose wings possess the power to level mountains. This is Lugia, the great protector of the sea. To many, they are simply the mascots of a bygone era of gaming, the faces of gold and silver that defined a generation of trainers. But to look closer at their history is to uncover the foundational architecture of the entire Pokémon mythos. They are not merely powerful creatures, they are the original duality. Before there was time and space, before there was life and death, there was the sky and the sea, there was the fire that gives life, and the storm that demands restraint. Ho-Oh and Lugia represent the first time the series moved beyond simple monsters and into the realm of true divinity, establishing a narrative template that every subsequent region would follow. Imagine a time 700 years ago, in the heart of Ecruteak city, 2 massive wooden towers reached toward the heavens, twin pillars of harmony where humans and Pokémon lived in perfect balance. One was the Bell Tower, a site of shimmering gold where Ho-Oh would descend to bless the people. The other was the Brass Tower, a silver sanctuary where Lugia rested, watching over the world from its perch. This was an age of peace, a golden era where the divine walked among the mortal. But peace is a fragile thing, and in the world of Pokémon, tragedy is often the catalyst for legend. A single bolt of lightning changed everything. It struck the Brass Tower, igniting a fire that raged for 3 days and 3 nights. The rain that eventually extinguished the flames came too late to save the sanctuary, and in the charred remains of the tower, 3 nameless Pokémon perished. It was a moment of profound loss, a scar on the history of Johto that would never truly heal. But it was in this moment of ash and sorrow that the true nature of these legends was revealed. Ho-Oh did not simply mourn, it acted. It descended from the heavens, and through a miracle of rebirth, breathed new life into the fallen. From the embers of the fire, the lightning of the storm, and the rain that ended the blaze, the legendary beasts, Raikou, Entei, and Suicune, were born. Yet for every act of creation, there is an act of withdrawal. While Ho-Oh chose to remain as a symbol of hope, Lugia saw the devastation and chose a different path. It recognized that its own power was too great, too volatile for a world shared with humans. It retreated into the depths of the ocean, hiding itself away to protect the world from its own strength. This choice, the decision to go into exile for the sake of balance, defines Lugia's character just as much as the resurrection defines Ho-Oh's. This is the mystery we are here to unravel tonight. Why did these 2 beings, so different in element and temperament, choose such divergent paths? How did a fire in a single city in Johto ripple outward to influence the legends of Hoenn, Sinnoh, and beyond? We often talk about the gods of the Pokémon world, Arceus, Dialga, Palkia, but Ho-Oh and Lugia are the legends that feel the most human. Their stories are built on themes of grief, responsibility, and the complicated relationship between the divine and the mundane. In the hours ahead, we will journey through the smoke-filled history of the burned tower and the sun-drenched heights of the Bell Tower. We will explore the hidden connections between Lugia and the legendary birds of Kanto, seeing how its role as a master of storms keeps the world from falling into chaos. We will look at Ho-Oh's elusive nature, a creature that only appears to those with a pure heart, serving as a distant promise of wonder that has persisted since the very first episode of the anime. We will examine the cultural roots of these beings, from the majestic Fenghuang of East Asian mythology to the terrifying leviathans of the deep sea. we will see how their design and lore set the stage for every legendary pair that followed, creating a language of opposites, light and shadow, land and sea, past and future, that continues to shape the franchise to this day. As we dive into this deep lore, let the world around you fade away. Imagine the scent of ancient cedar and incense in the streets of Ecruteak. Feel the cool mist of the ocean spray as we descend into the Whirl Islands. This is more than a history of two birds. It is a chronicle of how the world was shaped by the wings of the sky and the heart of the sea. It is a story of rebirth, of restraint, and of the enduring bond between the world and the mysteries that fly just out of reach. The fire has long since cooled, and the towers have aged into monuments of a lost time, but the legacy of Ho-Oh and Lugia remains, etched into the very fabric of the regions they touched. They are the guardians of our journey, the silent watchers of the horizon. Tonight, we finally listen to what their silence has to say. We look back to the beginning, to the gold and silver light that first showed us how vast and magical this world truly is. The year is 1999. Pokémon Gold and Silver are about to launch in Japan, and with them, a shift that would redefine what a legend could be. Up to this point, the mythic creatures of the Pokémon world had been powerful. Yes, Mewtwo, the legendary birds of Kanto, but their stories were largely functional. They were obstacles to catch, forces of nature to overcome. With Generation 2, something changed. Game Freak began building a mythology, a woven history of tragedy and rebirth, and at the heart of it stood two beings that were not just powerful, they were symbolic. This is where our story truly begins. You might remember the very first episode of the Pokémon anime, before Ash Ketchum even catches his first Pokémon, before Pikachu sparks any sort of bond. There is a moment that passes almost like a dream. Ash looks up at the sky, and there, high above the clouds, is a silhouette, a bird with a long tail, shimmering in golden light, trailing a rainbow. It lasts only seconds, but that image, that fleeting, impossible creature, became the franchise's signature promise of mystery. For years, fans wondered what it was. That bird was Ho-Oh, and it appeared before we even knew its name. Its presence in that opening scene wasn't an accident. It was a declaration. From now on, the Pokémon world would contain wonders that could never be fully captured, only glimpsed. That single silhouette defined an entire era. It told us that the journey ahead would be larger than badges and battles. It teased a mythic layer hidden just beyond the ordinary. And when Gold and Silver finally arrived, that tease became canon. Ho-Oh was no longer just a mystery. It was the golden bird, a phoenix of the heavens, tied to rainbows and rebirth. Its counterpart, Lugia, was a creature of the abyss. Where Ho-Oh soared in daylight, Lugia dwelled in ocean depths. Where Ho-Oh brought life from ashes, Lugia restrained storms and calmed chaos. Together, they formed a duality so elegant, it would echo through every generation that followed. The year 1999 introduced us to a new kind of storytelling. The games themselves began with a sense of history, burned towers, lost Pokémon, a lingering guilt. This was not a simple adventure. It was a world that remembered its wounds, and the legendaries at the center of that world were not just rare spawns. They were the architects of consequence. Ho-Oh, the celestial phoenix, whose fire burns away death. Lugia, the abyssal dragon, whose wings hold back the tempest. One upward, one downward. One visible in the rainbow after a storm. One hidden beneath the waves, watching. Their duality is not about conflict. It is about balance. Sky and sea, hope and restraint, creation and guardianship. And that balance is rooted in a single place. A city where two towers once stood as monuments to harmony. That city is Ecruteak, and its architecture tells a story that predates even the games themselves. Before we understand the towers, we need to see them. We need to walk through the streets of that ancient city, where every stone and every bell echoes the tragedy that shaped Ho-Oh and Lugia into the immortals they are. That is where we will go next. That is the architecture of Ecruteak City. A blueprint of loss and legacy waiting to be uncovered. In the land of Johto, there is a city that breathes like a living memory. Ecruteak City, the cultural heart of this ancient region, is more than just a collection of streets and rooftops. It is a place where the past has weight, where every wooden beam and stone path seems to speak of something older than the world we walk through. To understand Ho-Oh and Lugia, we must first understand this city, not as a map, but as a sacrament carved into the earth. The layout of Ecruteak is not accidental. It was built along a careful and deliberate, a settlement that honors the land it occupies. The heart of the city is marked by two towering structures that rise above the mist, one standing proud and whole, the other broken and silent. These are the Bell Tower and the Brass Tower. They are not merely landmarks. They are the reason Ecruteak exists. In the oldest records, these towers were constructed as bridges between the human and the divine, physical threads that stretched upward into the sky and downward into the sacred earth. The Bell Tower, still standing in its glory, is a wonder of craftsmanship. Its multiple stories ascend like a prayer, each level a step closer to the heavens. The architecture draws deeply mirrors the traditional Japanese aesthetic that defines so much of Johto. The curved roofs, the wooden lattices, the careful harmony between structure and nature. But here, that aesthetic is more than visual beauty. It is Shinto in its bones, the idea that the divine is not distant, but present all around us, in the wind and the rain, in the towers that reach for the sky. The Bell Tower was a place where humans could meet the gods, where the sacred was invited to walk among the people. It was, and still is, the anchor of Ho-Oh in this world. Opposite it, the Brass Tower once stood as its counterpart. Today we call it the Burned Tower, a name that carries the sorrow of what happened. Even in ruin, its shape reveals its original purpose. It was a bridge too, a connection to the divine, but it was meant to honor. That bridge was broken by fire, but its stones still carry the memory of Lugia's presence. The two towers together defined Ecruteak's spiritual geometry. They were not in competition. They were complements, one facing the sky, the other rooted in the depths, above and below, light and shadow, creation and silent guardianship. The city was designed around them, a living mandala of belief. Walking the streets of Ecruteak, you cannot escape the feeling of walking through a shrine. The traditional aesthetic reinforces everything the towers represent. The gardens, the lanterns, even the location of the gym, all arranged to maintain a sense of sacred order. The city itself becomes a temple, with third bridge, not made of wood or stone, but of daily life. Every resident of Ecruteak lives within the shadow of the towers. Every passerby walks on ground that remembers the footsteps of Ho-Oh and Lugia. This is not a city that has forgotten its legends. It is a city that refuses to let them fade into silence. The spiritual intent is woven into the wood grain. For generations, the people of Ecruteak tended to these towers as acts of devotion, as if polishing the connection between their world and the one above. The Bell Tower rang with ceremonies. The Brass Tower stood as a quiet sentinel. They were the two pillars of a faith that believed in balance and renewal. And then the balance was shattered. A lightning strike, a fire that raged for 3 nights, and a silence that followed. The bridge that connected Lugia to the city crumbled, and the divine withdrew. But the story does not end with ruin. The wreckage of the Brass Tower still teaches us something. Its charred beams and gaping walls are not a testament to failure, but a reminder of what was lost and what still might be restored. And the Bell Tower remains of that tower. Hold the memory of the day the sky cried fire, a moment that changed Johto forever. We ended our last chapter deep in the architecture of Ecruteak City, standing at the base of those two great towers, the Bell Tower, gleaming in gold, and the Brass Tower, darker, heavier, grounded. They were built not just as temples, but as bridges, a physical connection between the world of humans and the world of the divine, a covenant of balance. For generations this balance held. Ho-Oh watched from the sky. Lugia rested in the depths beneath the tower. Ecruteak was a place where harmony was not a myth, but a living, breathing reality. But harmony, as we know, is fragile, and on one specific night, 7 centuries ago, that reality was shattered. Let us reconstruct the moments of that evening. The air over Johto was thick, heavy, unusually still. The sky had turned a deep, bruised purple as the sun set. Those who lived in Ecruteak at the time would have felt it. That strange pressure behind the eyes, that electrical charge in the air that makes the hair on your arms stand on end. The animal kingdom knew before the humans did. The Hoot-Hoot fell silent. The Centret vanished into their burrows. Even the mighty Ho-Oh was seen circling further and further away from the city that evening. A storm was brewing, but not just any storm. This was a storm with intent. As the night deepened, the clouds gathered directly above the city. They blocked out the stars. The city fell into an unnatural darkness, and then the sky cried fire. It was not a gentle rain that began the tragedy. It was a single, devastating bolt of lightning. Imagine it. A searing white fork that split the sky in half, followed not by a roll of thunder, but by a deafening, instantaneous crack that seemed to shake the very foundation of the brass tower. When the lightning struck, it was not a flash that faded. It lingered. The entire tower was illuminated, every single one of its ancient carvings and sigils visible against the night for one terrible, glorious moment before the darkness swallowed it. And the flames took over. The strike did not simply graze the structure. It struck the very peak of the tower, where the metal met the sky. It was a direct hit. The point of impact was instantaneous. The brass, the wood, the ancient beams, they did not stand a chance. In one blinding flash, the covenant was broken. The sky had reached down and touched the earth with its most violent finger. The fire that followed was not a simple flame. It was an inferno that seemed to feed on the very soul of the structure. The flames did not just burn, they consumed. They danced and roared and screamed, turning the proud brass into molten tears that dripped down the blackened stone. For 3 days and 3 nights, the brass tower burned. For 3 days, Ecruteak City was a ghost of itself. No commerce, no laughter, only the constant, rhythmic thud of buckets hitting the ground, and the desperate prayers to a god that seemed to have turned its back. The fire was an emperor. It ruled the city. It dictated the wind, the sounds, the very temperature of the air. The heat was so intense that it could be felt on the skin from a mile away. The citizens tried to fight it. Buckets of water were passed hand over hand. Prayers were offered to the skies, but the fire was relentless. It was as if the tower was being purified by a force greater than human hands could control. And all the while, the rain refused to come. The storm that had birthed the lightning had moved on. The sky was holding its breath. It was not until the 3rd day, when the tower was little more than a charred skeleton, that the clouds finally broke. The rain that fell was not a triumphant rescue. It was a lament, a slow, deliberate weeping from the heavens. It fell on the smouldering remains, not to save, but to cool, to let the ashes settle. The rain extinguished the flames, but the fire had already done its work. The steam smelled of charred history. By dawn, the tower was black, cold, a grave. And in the heart of those smouldering ruins, there was a silence, a profound, terrible silence, because something had been lost that could never be replaced by mere bricks and mortar. The 3 Pokémon who died in the brass tower are nameless to history. Their individual identities, their species, their dreams, all consumed. They are known to us only by what they became after. But in that moment, in the fire, they were just victims. 3 innocent lives, caught in a tragedy they did not create. Their souls, tangled in the burning brass, did not fade. They burned. They were purified in the crucible of the fire. Their symbolic death represents the death of an age. The age of absolute trust between human and Pokémon. The age of the towers as open bridges. When those 3 lives were extinguished, something broke in the world. The nameless Pokémon became martyrs, sacrifices to a broken covenant. And in the silent, smoking aftermath, Ecruteak City mourned not just a tower, but the loss of its own innocence. In the sky above, there was a silent witness. Ho-Oh, the golden phoenix, had watched the entire tragedy unfold. It had felt the lightning strike, felt the flame consume the lives below. It could have intervened. It could have rained down a gentle wind to quell the flames. But some tragedies must run their course. Some covenants must be broken to be rewritten. Ho-Oh watched, and it remembered. It remembered every prayer that had ever risen from the bell tower, and in its ancient glowing heart, a plan was taking shape, a plan for the morning. The rain had stopped, the wind had died. The citizens stood in the ash and wept. They looked to the bell tower, still standing, a scarred monument to what they had lost, but they also looked to the sky. And in that sky, high above the smoke, a single point of light began to glow. It was not a star. It was not a reflection of the dying embers. It was a living flame, diving through the clouds, surrounded by a corona of every colour imaginable. The clouds began to part. A shaft of sunlight broke through, carrying within it a spectrum of colour, so vivid it hurt to look at. The rainbow was descending. Ho-Oh was descending. And the true story, the miracle beyond the tragedy, was only just beginning. When the rain finally fell, It did not feel like a victory. The fire had raged for 3 days, and by the time the sky opened, the brass tower was already a corpse. You have to understand the weight of silence that follows such a catastrophe. Not the silence of peace, but the silence of absence. The hiss of steam as rain struck hot stone, the dripping of water through charred rafters, the absence of the bells that had rung for centuries. The flames had collapsed the upper floors, warped the ancient metal, and reduced centuries of shared history to black timber and shattered stone. But the deepest wound was not architectural. It was the 3 Pokémon. The tower's most loyal residents, the keepers of its hearth, had not made it out. Their bodies were found in the ruins, side by side. And when the smoke cleared and the last of the rain dripped from the eaves of the surviving bell tower, the people of Ecruteak stood in heavy silence. They had witnessed the full extent of nature's indifference. Now they waited for what came next. They did not know what form salvation might take, but the sky knew, and what the sky did next would define the mythology of Johto forever. And then the clouds parted, not with a clamour, not with a violent wind. The clouds simply parted as if an unseen hand, patient and absolute, had brushed them aside, revealing a vast patch of pure deep blue sky. And in the centre of that blue, a single point of light began to grow. At first it was just a spark, barely distinguishable from the distant stars fading into morning, but it grew steadily, deliberately. It shimmered with an impossible spectrum of colours. A rainbow, but not a rainbow born of sunlight and water. A rainbow that moved with a will of its own. A living rainbow descending from the heavens. It was Ho-Oh, and it was coming down to the smouldering ruins. This is the moment the legend becomes real. This is the moment of divine intervention. A mythic turning point where the cosmos intervenes directly in the affairs of mortals, where a god chooses to mend what chaos has shattered. Ho-Oh did not land with a crash of thunder. It landed as softly as a sigh, its great wings folding against its golden body. The ground beneath its feet did not burn. Instead, the charred wood began to glow faintly, not with destruction, but with a soft restorative warmth that spread like ripples in a pond. This is where we must pause to analyse the true nature of the sacred fire that Ho-Oh commands. It is not the fire of the lightning strike, which was raw, indifferent, and purely destructive. That fire was chaos. It was a random act of nature that served no purpose but to consume. The sacred fire is something entirely different. It is a flame of purification, a fire that does not consume, but rekindles the very essence of life. In many ancient traditions, fire is the cleanser. It burns away the old to make room for the new. But the sacred fire goes a step further. It waits for the sacrifice, and then it honours it by creating something greater. It is a divine heat that seeks out what is broken, and on a fundamental level, it rewrites reality. It convinces the universe to unbreak something, to rewrite a story that was supposed to end. In the mythology of our own world, the phoenix is a bird that builds its own pyre and is consumed by the flames, only to rise again from the ashes. It is a cycle of self-destruction and self-creation. But Ho-Oh's act in Ecruteak is distinct. Ho-Oh did not sacrifice itself. It did not create the fire. The fire was an accident, a tragedy born of chaos and neglect. Ho-Oh arrived as an external force of grace. It descended into a tragedy it did not cause, and it took the broken pieces left by someone else's disaster and made them sacred. This is what elevates the legend of the legendary beasts beyond simple resurrection. It is an act of profound empathy from a divine being. The sacred fire in this context is not just a tool of power, it is a tool of mercy. It is the cosmos admitting that this story should not have ended this way, and reaching down to fix it. O stood before the 3 fallen creatures. The air grew heavy with expectation. The feathers on its tail glowed brighter, casting a prismatic light across the wreckage. It bowed its head, not in grief but in recognition, an acknowledgement of the souls that had been lost. And then it breathed out a plume of sacred flame. The fire did not spread, it coalesced. It gathered around the 3 motionless forms, lifting them gently off the ash-covered ground. The people watching could not see what was happening inside that cocoon of rainbow-coloured embers, but they could feel it. The air grew warm. The smell of smoke was replaced by ozone and the sweet scent of blossoms that had not yet bloomed. It smelled like spring arriving in the middle of winter. Inside that sphere of light, something ancient was being unwritten and rewritten. The memories of the tower were being purified. The tragedy was being stripped of its finality. The transformation did not take seconds, nor did it take hours. It existed outside of the flow of time that humans can perceive. Inside the sacred fire, the souls of the 3 Pokémon were being reshaped. Their bodies did not simply heal. They evolved into living symbols of the very forces that had shaped their death. Ho-Oh was not just saving them, it was elevating them. It was creating a legacy that would outlast the towers themselves. The first to emerge was a creature of pure electric fury. Its hide was scarred with black and yellow. The very pattern of the lightning bolt that had struck the tower, electricity asked across its back, not with wild abandon, but with a disciplined, palpable rage that hummed in the air around it. This was Raikou, the beast of thunder. It did not walk out of the fire. It galloped, as if it had been running for centuries and was never going to stop. Its roar was the sound of a storm breaking over a mountain. It carried the anger of the lightning, but now it was a controlled storm, a guardian of the very element that had once destroyed it. The second to emerge was slower, more deliberate. It moved with the weight of the earth itself, each step sinking slightly into the ash before taking the next. Its mane was a cascade of living flame, burning like the core of a volcano, and its roar was a deep, resonant sound that shook the remaining stones of the tower to their foundations. This was Entei, the volcano Pokémon. It was the embodiment of the fire that had gutted the tower, but transformed into a controlled, protective energy. It looked at the ruins, and it understood what it had become. It was no longer a victim of fire. It was the master of it, the bringer of warmth, the destroyer of what threatens. The last one stepped out of the fading light, like a northern wind made flesh. There was no anger in its eyes. There was no lightning, no fire, only a profound ancient clarity, a stillness that rivaled the deepest lake in Johto. It was the calm after the storm. It was the silence after the last ember dies. This was Suicune, the embodiment of the pure water that had finally quenched the flames. It walked across the ashes and left no trace. Where it passed, the charred ground began to show green shoots. It was the angel of the north wind, the bringer of purification, the promise that after every fire, water will come. Ho-Oh had not just resurrected them, it had made them more than they ever were. Their tragedy was not erased, it was memorialized. They wore their death as a badge of honor, as a source of power. The lightning, the fire, the rain. These were no longer simply the instruments of their death. They were reborn as avatars of these forces. They ran from the ruins, each going in a different direction, carrying the memory of the towers with them across the entire world. And as they disappeared over the hills of Johto, the legend was no longer a story about loss. It was a story about transcendence. It was a story about a phoenix that turned death into life, and life into legend. The people of Ecruteak looked at Ho-Oh. The sun had fully broken through the clouds by now, and the rainbow bird was a silhouette of pure, unblemished light against the blue. It lifted its head, its rainbow feathers catching the first true rays of sunlight that had touched Ecruteak in days. And then it too took to the sky, circling the bell tower once, a gentle farewell to the humans who had witnessed its miracle. It settled on the summit of the bell tower, and the city began to heal. But there is another side to this story, a silence that lingers in the ashes of the brass tower. If Ho-Oh represents the power of rebirth, the refusal to let tragedy have the final word, what about Lugia, the guardian who had watched over the other tower, the one whose name is tied to the very structure that burned? Where was Lugia in this moment of destruction and renewal? Lugia was present, but not in the light. Lugia saw the fire. Lugia felt the death of the 3 Pokémon. But while Ho-Oh descended to restore, Lugia turned away. The choice was not a failure of compassion. It was a different kind of reaction, a deep, soulful withdrawal into the sea, a decision that the world of humans needed guarding from a distance rather than within it. By choosing to act, Ho-Oh gave the world a trio of elemental guardians. By choosing silence, by retreating to the deepest trenches of the ocean, Lugia gave the world a different kind of mystery, a question mark on the map. and the story of Ho-Oh cannot be fully understood without understanding the profound echoing silence of its counterpart. That silence has a shape. That shape is an island surrounded by an endless, churning maelstrom. Up next is Chapter 5, Lugia's Exile and the Whirl Islands. This is a journey into the opposite reaction to tragedy. A story not of restoration, but of profound retreat. A story that asks what happens when a deity, so powerful it can stir the seas and calm the mightiest storms, chooses the solitude of the abyss over the company of light. A journey deep into the currents of the Whirl Islands, where one of Pokémon's most powerful and tragic legends waits, listening to the pulse of the ocean, watching the surface from below, and waiting for a reason to return to the world it left behind. Ho-Oh had descended from the heavens, and in a flare of sacred fire, 3 lives were reborn. But while the rainbow bird healed what had been broken, another presence remained unseen, watching from the shadows of the smouldering ruins. The brass tower, once a monument to harmony between humans and Pokémon, now stood as a charred skeleton, its blackened timbers still weeping smoke into the Johto sky. And somewhere in the depths of that ruin, a decision was being made that would echo across the centuries. We focus on the miracle of resurrection, but the real weight of that tragedy lies in the one who chose to leave. Lugia, the guardian of the brass, had long been associated with the deep places of the world, the ocean trenches, the underworld currents, the spaces where light rarely reaches. Its role was never to rise above the clouds like Ho-Oh. It was to hold the balance beneath. And in that moment, as the last ember of the blaze flickered out under a desperate rain, Lugia understood something that would shape its entire future. Humans had allowed the fire to happen. The lightning had struck, yes, but the tower had stood for centuries, a testament to trust. That trust had been broken by neglect, the failure to protect what was sacred. So Lugia left, not in anger, not in vengeance, but in a terrible patient sorrow. It withdrew from Ecruteak City, from the sight of humankind, from the very world above the waves. And as it departed, the brass tower was no longer called by its old name. People began to refer to it as the Burned Tower, a permanent scar on the landscape, a reminder not just of the fire, but of the absence that followed. The tower's silhouette changed from a proud spire, reaching for the sky, to a broken tooth against the horizon. Every traveller after traveller would pass through Ecruteak and hear the story, how the tower had burned for 3 days, how 3 Pokémon had perished, how a divine bird had given them new life. But few spoke of the other bird that had once roosted there. Few remembered that Lugia had stood watch over that tower for untold generations, and that its flight was the true cost of the disaster. And so Lugia's retreat was not an exile in the sense of being cast out. It was a self-imposed withdrawal, an act of protection born from disillusionment. It swam eastward, leaving the familiar waters of Johto, passing through currents that grow colder and darker the deeper you go. Eventually, it reached the Whirl Islands, a treacherous cluster of islets surrounded by churning sea, where the water spirals into permanent vortexes. There, in an underwater cavern hidden beneath the currents, Lugia found a new sanctuary, a place where storms could be contained, where the chaos of the world above could not reach. And there it stayed, silent, watching, guarding the ocean's depths with a power that could stir hurricanes or calm them with a thought. Its role transformed. No longer a tower keeper bound to a human city, Lugia became a hidden protector, a force that moved through the deep trenches, unseen, unheard, but always present. Its Pokédex entries would later describe it as a creature that sleeps at the bottom of the sea, that its wings alone can cause destruction, but that it chooses to remain still, to restrain its power. And that is the key to understanding Lugia's story. It is not a god of rebirth like Hatyo, but a god of restraint. It holds back the storm, contains itself. It bears the weight of what it witnessed that day in Ecruteak, and it carries that memory into the darkness of the ocean. The Whirl Islands remain a place of legend. Sailors speak of sudden calm waters and strange shadows beneath the waves. Some say that when the world's balance tips too far, when storms rage out of control, or when the three great birds of the sky clash, Lugia rises. It breaks the surface, spreads its immense wings, and imposes stillness. But for most of history it stays below, a silent sentinel, a living scar that mirrors the burned tower above. And yet, the story does not end with Lugia's isolation, because in the years that followed, Hodi's miracle created more than just the life of three Pokémon. It also set the stage for a new order in the sky, a trio of elemental birds that would roam the world, free from human towers, embodying the raw forces of ice, lightning, and flame. Their story is one of tension, of conflict, of a struggle that would eventually call Lugia back to the surface. That is what we will explore next, in what might be the most turbulent chapter of all, the elemental trio of the sky. And so Lugia withdrew into the depths, leaving behind a city, guarded not only by flame, but by the silence of a guardian who could no longer bear to watch. The burned tower became a monument to loss, but also to the strange grace that follows tragedy. For even as the brass tower was not the only sacred spire in Ecruteak, across the city, the bell tower still rose toward the sky, its golden roof catching the light of every dawn. And it was here that Ho-Oh remained, not as a ruler, but as a promise. The connection between Ho-Oh and the rainbow runs deeper than any simple visual motif. In East Asian mythology, the creature known as Hu is not the same as the Western phoenix, though the two are often conflated. The Hu is a celestial bird that appears only in times of peace and prosperity, a harbinger of virtue, rather than a creature of fire and rebirth. It is said to embody the 5 colours of the rainbow, each one representing a cardinal virtue: benevolence, righteousness, propriety, wisdom, and sincerity. And when these virtues align in a single soul, the Wu descends from heaven to mark the beginning of an age of harmony. Now consider Ho-Oh, the Pokémon that shares that name, in its original Japanese. Its body shimmers with the same spectrum of colours. Its wings trail like ribbons of light across the sky, and its appearance is never random. It is a response. In Johto, the legend does not speak of Ho-Oh as a territorial deity guarding a mountain or a cave. Instead, it describes a being that can only be seen by those who have proven themselves worthy. The rainbow wing is not a simple key that opens a door. It is a physical manifestation of a trainer's pure heart, an object that cannot be found through strength alone, but only through the quiet alignment of one's intentions with the virtues the rainbow represents. That is why the journey to summon Ho-Oh is not about combat. In the games, you cannot simply battle your way to the top of the bell tower and expect the bird to descend. You must first obtain the rainbow wing. But even that is not enough by itself. The wing must be held by someone with a soul that echoes the harmony of old. And so the real requirement is the clear bell, an ancient artifact that can only be rung by those whose hearts are free of discord. The clear bell is the spiritual tuning fork of the Johto region. When it is sounded, it resonates not with physical vibration, but with the very frequency of a person's character. If that frequency is pure, the bell tower responds, and Ho-Oh hears the call from wherever it roams beyond the mortal horizon. But all of this raises a deeper question. If Ho-Oh is tied to the rainbow, and the rainbow itself is a bridge between the storm and the calm, then what does it mean for Lugia? Who is the storm? How do the two exist not as rivals, but as complementary forces that together form the balance of the sky itself? The answer lies not in the air above Johto, but in the churning seas below, where a different kind of guardian stirs in the dark. And that is where our next chapter must go, into the abyss where even the light of the rainbow cannot reach, and where a solitary figure waits, wrapped in thunder and silence. The rainbow wing is a symbol of active grace, a promise that divinity will descend if the heart proves pure enough. It is Ho-Oh, reaching out from the heavens to the world. Lugia's counterpart, the silver wing, functions on the exact opposite principle. It is not a promise of meeting. It is a key that allows the brave to descend into an absence. Where Ho-Oh inhabits the sky and the light, Lugia is a story told entirely by what it leaves behind: a missing type, a burned tower, a silent sea. To understand the sovereign of the we must first accept that its entire mythology is built around a deliberate void. This chapter is journey into that void. The first and most obvious void is Lugia's typing. It is psychic and flying. On paper, this classification makes little sense. It lives in the deepest known oceanic trench. It controls the weather of the entire sea. It is surrounded by water on all sides. Why is it not a water type? The fan theories surrounding this missing type are vast, and they speak to a core narrative truth about Lugia. If Lugia were a water type, it would belong to the sea. It would be a creature of the fluid, the current, the wave. But Lugia is not a creature of the ocean. It is a prisoner of the ocean. Psychic is the type of the mind, of willpower, of absolute control. Lugia is not immersed in the ocean. It is holding the ocean back. It is a living dam made of flesh and psychic force. The water type represents fluidity and surrender. Lugia represents rigid, perfect restraint. This tension between what it is and what it dwells in is the exact source of its tragedy. It is a flying creature that cannot fly to the surface without drowning the world in storms. It is a sea creature that has no connection to the element it protects. This missing type is the first clue that Lugia does not belong anywhere, that its only true home is the isolated chamber of its own mind. This isolation is enforced by the very geography of Johto. The Whirl Islands are a fortress of spinning water, a natural lock placed on the world's deepest secret. To enter this fortress, one must possess two objects of immense symbolic weight: the silver wing and the tidal bell. The silver wing is a feather shed from Lugia itself, a piece of the sovereign cast adrift. It acts as a key to the outermost whirlpool, granting entry into the central chamber of the islands. But the innermost sanctum requires something deeper. The tidal bell is a relic that speaks the ancient language of the sea itself. Where the silver wing opens the door, the tidal bell calms the storm within. It quiets the rage of the water. Together, they are not just items of convenience. They are pieces of a forgotten ritual. The silver wing represents the willingness of the guardian to be found, a faint echo of its presence, still resonating in the world. The tidal bell represents the ability of the seeker to bring peace. You cannot find Lugia with a weapon or brute force. You can only reach it by proving you can calm the chaos that surrounds it. You must pierce the whirlpool with permission, and then you must still the waves with understanding. And the chaos it surrounds itself with is not a choice. It is a condition of its existence. This brings us to the most staggering piece of biology in legendary Pokémon lore. A single beat of Lugia's wings is said to cause storms that last 40 days and 40 nights. Read that statement carefully. A single wing beat, not a fight, not a state of anger. A single natural motion of its body generates enough force to devastate the global climate for over a month. This is not a power Lugia can switch on or off. It is a curse it must navigate every second of its existence. Lugia's immense physical strength is the reason it sleeps. It is not a hero waiting for a trainer to wake it. It is a catastrophic natural force that has learned the ultimate discipline: stillness. Every moment Lugia rests, the world is safe. Every time it stirs in its sleep, a gale is born in the world above. Its isolation is not a punishment for the burning of the brass tower. It is a mercy offered to a fragile world. Lugia controls the sea. It controls the storms. But it can only do so by controlling itself with a level of psychic discipline no other living being can comprehend. It is a storm that dreams it is a guardian. So when we speak of Lugia's legacy, we speak of restraint. It leaves behind no pack of roaming beasts, no trail of resurrected life. It leaves behind the silence of a held breath, the stillness of a wave that never broke. But the other side of the Johto equation is defined by a completely opposing force. If Lugia is the keeper of the storm that did not happen, Oh is the architect of the storm that changed the world forever. The burned tower was not just the grave of 3 innocent Pokémon, it was the birthplace of an entirely new legend. As we leave the cold, silent depths of the Whirl Islands, we must turn our faces to the sun and the rain. We must examine the footprint Ho-Oh left on the land. We must understand the three who rose from the ash. This is the story of the legendary beasts, Ho-Oh's living legacy. And so we leave behind the silver wing and the tidal bell, those keys to Lugia's hidden realm, and turn our gaze to the embers that still glow in Johto's oldest tale. For if Lugia's departure was the quiet aftermath, Ho-Oh's response was the thunderous recreation. The fire that consumed the brass tower did not simply end in ash and rain. It was reborn in three distinct forms, each one a living echo of the disaster itself. Lightning, fire, and rain, the very elements of that terrible night, became flesh, became will, became the legendary beasts. Consider first the lightning that struck the tower. That single bolt of electricity, wild and indifferent, set the entire tragedy in motion. And from that spark, Ho-Oh forged Raikou. Raikou is not merely a Pokémon of thunder. It is the embodiment of the strike that changed Johto's fate. Its mane crackles with uncontainable energy, its roar splits the sky, and its paws pound the earth with the force of a storm's first blow. When you encounter Raikou, you are not facing a creature of simple weather. You are facing the memory of the moment the brass tower ignited. It is the lightning that started it all. Given a body that races across the land at impossible speed, eternally chasing the next flash, then there is the fire that burned for 3 days. That relentless flame consumed wood and stone, life and memory, until all that remained was a hollow shell. Ho-Oh took that fire and shaped it into Entei. Entei is the raging heat of the inferno, the heart of the blaze that would not be quenched. Its mane billows like a furnace, its breath scorches the ground, and its presence alone can melt stone. But Entei is not mindless destruction. It is the fire of rebirth, the same sacred flame that Ho-Oh used to resurrect the fallen. Every roar is an echo of the phoenix's cry. Every eruption is a reminder that from the hottest destruction can come new life. Entei travels the world as a volcano given sentience, a protector of the innocent and a judge of those who would burn without purpose. And finally, the rain that extinguished the flames. After 3 days of fire, the heavens opened and water poured down to cool the embers. That gentle yet determined downpour became Suicune. Suicune is the north wind, the purifying stream, the calm after the storm. It runs across the surface of lakes, leaving behind crystal clear water. Its mane flows like a waterfall, and its steps leave no trace of the devastation it once ended. Suicune embodies the mercy of the rain that finally brought peace to the smouldering tower. It is the most elusive of the three, often seen only by those with the purest hearts, for it carries the memory of Ho-Oh's compassion. Where Raikou is the strike and Entei is the blaze, Suicune is the silence that follows, the deep breath after the inferno. These three are not independent legends. They are extensions of Ho-Oh's will, scattered across Johto and beyond to serve as living testaments to the tower fire. And their purpose is not to hide. They wander, they observe, they judge. For Ho-Oh entrusted them with a sacred duty, to roam the world and witness the worthiness of humanity. Are you kind? Are you brave? Do you value life? The beasts see all. Raikou appears to those who face danger with courage, Entei to those who protect the weak, and Suicune to those who seek truth and purity. They do not speak, but their presence is a sign, a flash in the distance, a rumble on the horizon, a glint of water at dawn. They are Ho-Oh's eyes on the earth, ensuring that the tragic lesson of the brass tower is never forgotten. And so, the three fallen Pokémon were not simply restored to life. They were transformed into something greater. They became the living legacy of Ho-Oh's mercy and judgment. They carry the memory of the lightning, the fire, and the rain across every generation, reminding trainers and travelers alike that every disaster carries within it the seed of a new beginning. But what of the other legendary bird? The one who withdrew to the depths. Lugia's story did not end in the Whirl Islands. The sea holds more than silence, and in a storm far from Johto, a film would bring Lugia's power to the world in a way that would forever change how the Guardian of the Deep The legendary beasts rose from the ashes of the brass tower, carrying Ho-Oh's will across Johto and beyond. But while Ho-Oh's miracle spread outward, another presence remained hidden, coiled in the cold dark of the ocean floor. Lugia had withdrawn long before the fire ever consumed the tower. Some say it sensed the coming tragedy and could not bear to witness it. Others believe the lightning strike that killed the 3 Pokémon was a warning from the deep itself, a signal that the bond between humans and legendary birds was fracturing. Whatever the truth, Lugia's silence became its defining trait. For years it existed only as a whisper in sailors' tales, a shadow beneath the whirlpools of the Johto coast. Then, in the year 2000, the world finally heard its voice. The film Pokémon, The Power of One, changed everything for Lugia. Before that summer release, the psychic-type bird was known primarily to players who had conquered the Whirl Islands in gold and silver, but the movie catapulted this creature into global consciousness, transforming it from a regional mystery into an icon of elemental balance. The film's plot revolved around a crisis sparked by the awakening of the 3 legendary birds of Kanto was famous for: Articuno, Zapdos and Moltres. In the game canon, these 3 were simply powerful Pokémon with no direct connection to Lugia, but the movie writers saw an opportunity to weave them into a larger mythos. They repositioned Lugia as the hidden force that keeps these volatile forces in check, the anchor that prevents the world from tearing itself apart when the birds clash. The story begins with a collector named Lawrence the Thray, who seeks to capture the 3 birds and use their power to summon Lugia itself. His obsession sets off a chain reaction that disrupts the natural harmony of the seasons. Articuno's ice spreads uncontrollably, Zapdos's lightning ignites endless storms, and Moltres' fire threatens to consume the sky. The world is thrown into chaos because the birds are fighting for dominance, each trying to claim the elemental throne. It is only when Ash Ketchum, the young trainer from Pallet Town, discovers a prophecy that the true nature of Lugia is revealed. That prophecy introduces the title that would stick to Lugia forever: the Guardian of the Sea. The Guardian of the Sea is not a conqueror, not a creator. It is a keeper of boundaries, a being whose sole purpose is to pacify the extreme forces that could destabilize the planet. In the film, Lugia does not seek to destroy the birds or overpower them. Instead, it uses something far more subtle: a song. The Song of Lugia is a melodic hum that resonates with the very fabric of nature. When Ash plays the melody on a special instrument called the Sun Flute, Lugia rises from the depths and begins to sing. The song does not silence the birds, it soothes them, reminding each one of its proper role within the cycle. Articuno calms its blizzard, Zapdos sheathes its lightning, and Moltres tempers its flame. The chaos subsides not through battle, but through the restoration of balance. This narrative device, the Song of Lugia, is one of the most elegant pieces of storytelling in the Pokémon franchise. It reframes power not as strength or violence, but as understanding and harmony. Lugia is not the strongest bird in a fight. It is the one that knows how to listen, how to speak the language of the elements. The song becomes a metaphor for the wisdom of restraint, a theme that echoes Lugia's original lore from the Johto myth. Remember, after the Brass Tower burned, Lugia did not return to rebuild or punish. It withdrew into the sea, watching over the world from a distance, waiting for the moment when its song would be needed again. The film also cemented the visual identity of Lugia that would define its image for decades. The sleek dragon-like silhouette, the pale silver-blue skin, the glaring red eyes that seem to hold both sorrow and resolve. In an era before high-definition animation, the movie's depiction of Lugia soaring through a storm-torn sky left an indelible mark on a generation of viewers. Children who had never played a Pokémon game suddenly knew this creature's name, its role, its haunting cry. The movie's success was so massive that it influenced the design of later games, including the decision to give Lugia a distinctive cry in the remakes, and to reinforce its connection to the sea in every subsequent appearance. The introduction of the 3 legendary birds as Lugia charges, became a popular fan concept, even if the games never officially made that relationship canonical. In the movie, Articuno, Zapdos and Moltres are not Lugia's servants or rivals. They are aspects of nature that require a keeper. Lugia is the steady hand that prevents them from overstepping. This dynamic gave Lugia a moral gravity that Ho-Oh lacked at the time. Ho-Oh was celebrated for its miracle of rebirth, a moment of pure grace. Lugia, by contrast, was defined by its duty, its vigilance, its willingness to carry the burden of maintaining the world's fragile equilibrium. The Song of Lugia also introduced a new layer to the lore. The idea that sound itself could hold power over primal forces. It predates the later introduction of Meloetta and the concept of harmony in Unova, and it echoes the real-world myth of Orpheus, calming nature with his music. In the context of Pokémon, the song becomes a bridge between the human world and the legendary realm. Ash, a mere child, is able to play the Sun Flute because the prophecy states that only a pure-hearted soul can summon Lugia. This reinforces the idea that connection to legendaries is not about strength or knowledge, but about sincerity. Lugia responds not to force, but to trust. The film's ending is particularly poignant. After the crisis is resolved, Lugia does not stay. It returns to the depths, leaving behind a single feather, the silver wing. This feather becomes a symbol of trust given to Ash, a promise that Lugia will answer when called again. In the games, the silver wing is the key item that allows players to enter the Whirl Islands and encounter Lugia. The movie transformed that game mechanic into a story of earned friendship. Players who had collected the silver wing in gold and silver now understood that they were carrying a token of a guardian's faith. The global popularity that Lugia gained from the power of one cannot be overstated. Within months of the film's release, Lugia became one of the most recognizable legendary Pokémon in the world, second only to Mewtwo in marketability. Merchandise exploded. Plush toys, trading cards, figures, even a promotional McDonald's Happy Meal toy. The film's theme song, The Power of One by Donna Summer, added an epic, almost mythic soundtrack to Lugia's ascension. For many fans, Lugia stopped being a monster from a video game and became a symbol of environmental stewardship and inner peace. But the movie also raised questions that the franchise would leave unanswered for years. Who wrote the prophecy? What is the origin of the Sun Flute and the Moon Flute? And why did Lugia choose to hide its song within a human instrument? These threads would eventually be picked up in later generations. But at the time, they added an aura of mystery that made Lugia feel ancient and wise. The concept of a guardian of the sea expanded the idea of legendary Pokémon beyond simple godhood into something closer to a natural law. Lugia was not a deity to be worshipped. It was a force to be respected, a harbour for the storms of the world. In many ways, the film gave Lugia a personality that the games could only hint at. The movie Lugia is protective, wise, and melancholic. It speaks telepathically to Ash, revealing a gentle voice that contrasts with its intimidating appearance. It admits that it has watched humans for centuries, hoping they would learn to live in harmony with nature. This characterization resonated deeply with audiences, especially in an era when environmental themes were entering mainstream media. Lugia became a voice for the ocean, a living reminder that the powerful forces require careful handling. The three legendary birds, in turn, were elevated by their association with Lugia. Before the film, Articuno, Zapdos and Moltres were just rare Pokémon you could catch in the wild. After the film, they were seen as essential components of a balanced ecosystem, each one a sovereign of its element. The movie gave them a mythic weight that the games had not provided. Even today, many fans imagine these three as Lugia's subordinates, even though the official lore states they are independent beings. The film's narrative power proved stronger than the game text, shaping the collective understanding of the Pokémon world. The Song of Lugia also influenced later Pokémon media. The idea of using music to summon or control legendaries reappears in Pokémon Ranger and the Temple of the Sea with the Sea Temple Flute, and in Pokémon the movie, Hooper and the Clash of Ages, where a similar mechanism is used, but the original remains the most evocative. There is something haunting about the simplicity of a melody that can calm a hurricane. It suggests that chaos is not an enemy, but a melody out of tune, and that harmony is always possible if you know the right notes to play. As the credits rolled on the power of one, audiences were left with a lasting impression of Lugia as a guardian of peace, a keeper of the deep, and a singer of songs that could heal a wounded world. The film's success ensured that Lugia would never be just a box mascot again. It became a cultural pillar, a legendary bird whose cinematic ascension lifted it into the pantheon of Pokémon icons. And yet the story does not end there. Hidden within the details of that film and its connection to Johto's past is another layer, one that involves a secret tradition passed down through generations of women who serve as intermediaries between humans and the legendary guardians. These women, known as the Kimono Girls, hold the ancient knowledge of the songs and the flutes, and their history is entwined with the very origin of Lugia's retreat. Unraveling that secret reveals a deeper understanding of why Lugia chose Exile for destruction, and why Ho-Oh's rainbow still arcs over Ecruteak City to this day. That is the story waiting for you in the next chapter. The secret history of the Kimono Girls. From the global stage of the anime film, where Lugia's wings stretched across the ocean and into the hearts of a generation, we return to the quiet, ancient streets of Ecruteak City. Because while the movies gave Lugia its cinematic ascension, there is a far older, far more intimate story being told within the walls of a single dance hall, and it is told not with thunder or waves, but with the rustle of silk, the measured step of a wooden sandal, and the careful, deliberate motion of a fan. This is the secret history of the Kimono Girls. They are easy to overlook. In the game, they appear as 5 elegantly dressed women, each representing a different elemental evolution. You challenge them, one by one, in a quiet side room of the Ecruteak Dance Theatre. It feels like a distraction, a set of optional battles tucked away from the main quest. But in truth, these 5 women are the living archive of Johto's deepest myth. They are the keepers of the oral traditions of Ho-Oh and Lugia, and their ritual dances are not mere performance. They are a bridge, a fragile human bridge between the player and the ancient past. To understand this, you have to understand how Johto preserves its history. There are no written annals of the Tower Fire, no stone tablets carved with the names of the 3 fallen Pokémon. The legend has been passed down through generations of dancers, mothers to daughters, teachers to students. The dance itself is the record. Every spin, every outstretched arm extension, every pause. It encodes the story of the lightning strike, the 3 days of flame, the descent of Ho-Oh, and the silent retreat of Lugia into the sea. The Kimono Girls are not just practitioners of a traditional art. They are the living memory of a tragedy and a miracle. When you step into that theatre in Heart Gold and Soul Silver, you are not just entering a battle arena, you are entering a sacred space. The tatami mats, the sliding doors, the lantern light, it all evokes a time before the modern Pokémon world, a time when humans and legendaries were closer, and the Kimono Girls themselves, with their elaborate kimono and slow, deliberate movements, are reenacting the very moment that shaped Johto. The dance is not showmanship for tourists. It is a prayer, a continuous act of remembrance. But here is where the hidden depth truly reveals itself. In the original Gold and Silver, the Kimono Girls were a simple obstacle. You beat them, you get a call, you go to the Tin Tower. It was functional, but thin. In the remakes, Heart Gold and Soul Silver, the developers wove in a far more intricate requirement, a hidden, almost ritualistic path to trigger the final summoning rites. To call Ho-Oh or Lugia to the top of their respective towers, you cannot simply have the Rainbow Wing or the Silver Wing. You must first prove that you have listened to the dancers, that you understood the tradition. Specifically, after defeating all 5 Kimono Girls in the dance theatre, you must return to the tower, but the game does not tell you this directly. There is no quest marker. Instead, a a subtle, unspoken requirement. You must have seen the Kimono girls perform their dance. In Heart Gold and Soul Silver, if you watched the full dance sequence before the battles, the slow, hypnotic ritual that plays out in the theatre, the game flags it. You become, in the game's internal logic, a witness. You are no longer a mere traveller. You are part of the oral tradition. And only then, when you ascend the bell tower or dive to the Whirl Islands, does the legendary bird reveal itself. This mechanic is brilliant because it mirrors the real-world idea of initiation. You cannot simply demand an audience with a god. You must first be initiated into the community that remembers the god. The Kimono girls do not just hand you a key. They test whether you have the patience to sit still, to pay attention, to learn without a textbook. Dance is not a language you can read. It is a language you must experience. And what does that dance communicate? Look closely at the choreography. The Kimono girls trace a circle, then a line, then a circle again. The circle is the tower. The line is the fire. The second circle is the rainbow. In their silk sleeves, they reenact the fall of lightning. In the flick of a fan, they show the death of 3 small lives. In a slow, sweeping bend, they show the resurrection. And in a final frozen pose, arms outstretched, faces turned upward, they show the departure of Lugia. The sea dragon does not leave angrily, it leaves sorrowfully. And the dancers hold that sorrow in their posture for a full 5 seconds before breaking the pose. This is the secret history. It is not written in any journal in the game. It is not explained by an NPC. It is communicated through movement. And if you watch it, really watch it, you begin to understand why Ho-Oh and Lugia are not enemies, not rivals, but 2 halves of a single response to disaster. Ho-Oh chooses to act. Lugia chooses to withdraw. Both are valid. Both are sacred. The Kimono girls, then, are the bridge that allows us to cross from the present into that moment when the towers stood whole. Without them, the legend would be a footnote, a few lines of dialogue in a Pokémon Center. With them, it becomes a living tradition. And when you finally stand at the top of the bell tower, the rainbow wing glowing in your bag, the dance you witnessed in that quiet theatre is what gives the summoning its weight. Because you did not just collect a shiny feather, you participated in a culture. You honoured the keepers of the story. And that story is not finished. The towers, the fire, the dancers. They're all pieces of a larger puzzle that connects Johto to a deeper, older tradition. A tradition that goes beyond Pokémon, beyond even the games themselves. A tradition rooted in the very landscape of Japan, in shrines and myths that predate the franchise by centuries. Because the Kimono girls are not an invention of Game Freak alone. They are an echo of something far older, something we are about to trace back to its source, something that will change how you see every shrine, every bell, every ocean and mountain in the Pokémon world. The dance continues, and the next step leads us into the Shinto roots and mythic parallels that shaped not just Ho-Oh and Lugia, but the very fabric of the Johto region itself. Before we dive deeper into this incredible journey, I'm curious, where in the world are you watching this from? Drop a comment below and let our global community know. And if you're finding this as mind-blowing as I am, hit that like button to help more people discover this story. The Kimono girls of Ecruteak City performed their ritual dances not merely as entertainment, but as living memory. An unbroken chain of motion that preserved truths too ancient for written records. Their dances carried the weight of the towers, the fire, and the 2 beings who defined that sacred skyline. But what the dancers moved through was more than just history. They were channeling a worldview, a set of beliefs about purity and pollution, about the relationship between the divine and the mortal that stretched back to the very foundations of the culture that birthed these legends. To understand Ho-Oh and Lugia, we have to step outside the Pokémon world for a moment and look at the mythic soil in which their stories were planted. The towers of Ecruteak are not just buildings, they are spiritual landmarks rooted in concepts that are deeply Shinto, and at the heart of that tradition lies a word that explains why the burning of the brass tower was never just a fire, it was a stain. The word is kegare. It's often translated as impurity or defilement, but it means something more subtle than simple dirt. Kegari is a spiritual disruption, a break in the natural harmony that comes from events like death, disease, or disaster. It's not about sin in the Western sense. It's about a kind of cosmic pollution that needs to be cleansed. In Shinto, the way to restore purity is through ritual purification, through water, through salt, through fire. And when the brass tower burned and 3 Pokémon died in the flames, that event created a profound kegare. The tower, once a symbol of harmony between humans and Pokémon, became a site of spiritual stain. The smoke that rose from those 3 days was not just smoke. It was an emission of impurity, a wound in the fabric of the world. Now consider how each of the 2 guardians responded. Ho-Oh descended with the rainbow, an emblem of promise and renewal, and brought the 3 fallen creatures back to life. That act of resurrection was also an act of purification. By transforming death into new life, Ho-Oh washed away the spiritual pollution. The rainbow became a bridge between the broken and the restored. But Lugia took a different path. It withdrew. It retreated into the deep ocean, away from the stain, away from the corrupted tower. In Shinto terms, Lugia was not abandoning the world. It was refusing to dwell in a place of kegare. It was holding itself apart, waiting for the impurity to be cleansed by time, by the sea, by the slow work of nature. This dual response maps directly onto 2 of the most powerful figures in East Asian mythology. Ho-Oh, whose name in Japanese is written with the same characters as the Feng Wang, the immortal bird of Chinese legend. But the Feng Wang is not just a phoenix. In ancient Chinese cosmology, the Feng Wang was deeply tied to the virtue of the emperor. It was said that the Feng Wang would appear only when the ruler was just, when the kingdom was peaceful, when the proper order was maintained. The Feng Wang was a sign of moral harmony. So when Ho-Oh is shown as the guardian of the bell tower, the tower that did not burn, the one that remained upright and sacred, it fits perfectly. Ho-Oh is the embodiment of righteous rule, of the emperor's virtue made visible in flight. Its rainbow is the seal of that virtue, a promise that so long as the world is pure, the divine bird will return. On the other side, Lugia finds its parallel in Ryujin, the dragon god of the sea. Ryujin is a figure of immense power, ruler of the ocean depths, master of the tides. He is often depicted holding magical jewels, the tide jewels, which have the power to control the rise and fall of the sea itself. When Ryujin chooses to raise the tides, they flood. When he lowers them, the waters retreat. Lugia, with its ability to stir or calm storms, with its psychic command over the waves, mirrors this ancient sea deity. The silver wing and the tidal bell in the games are not just items. They are keys, talismans, the equivalent of Ryujin's jewels. They allow a worthy human to approach the depth, to stand before the guardian and ask for its return. And that return is the heart of the myth. The kegare of the burning tower did not last forever. In Shinto, purification is always possible. Water cleanses, time heals, and the divine can be invited back. Lugia may have withdrawn, but the rituals of the Kimono girls, the dances passed down for generations, were always about preparing the way for that return. They were not just remembering the past, they were maintaining the conditions for the future. The deeper you look into the Johto legend, the more you realize that the story is not about 2 birds. It is about 2 responses to tragedy, 2 ways of handling impurity, 2 ways of holding on to virtue and power. One rises, radiant and forgiving, and turns death into life. The other sinks, silent and protective, and waits for the stain to fade. But what happens when that waiting is corrupted? What happens when a being like Lugia is not just separated from humans, but actively twisted, remade into something dark? That is a question that the games themselves only touched upon in the margins, but one that has haunted the lore ever since. There is a shadow side to this story, a fragment of the myth that was never fully recorded in the towers of Ecruteak, a version of Lugia that broke from the cycle of purification and became something else entirely. And that anomaly, that distortion of the Guardian's original purpose, is a story that waits just beyond the horizon, in the darkness between the waves. We've been tracing the threads of myth and reality that bind Ho-Oh and Lugia, seeing how Lugia's story drifts beneath the surface, just out of sight, like the dragon god Ryujin, who holds the tides with magical jewels. That parallel is more than poetic. It's a clue to something darker, something that happened not in ancient Johto, but in a world that feels much closer to our own, a world where a shadow fell across the Silver Guardian itself. This is the Anomaly, the story of Shadow Lugia. In the Ore region, a place of deserts and artificial oases, the criminal syndicate Cypher had been perfecting a terrifying technology. They could take any Pokémon and force it into a state of pure, weaponized aggression. They called these creations Shadow Pokémon, but Cypher was not content with random captures. They sought a living weapon that could reshape the balance of power entirely, and they found their target in Lugia. But this wasn't the Lugia of the whirlpools, the storm Karma, the stern but patient guardian. This was a Lugia that had been seized and subjected to a process that went far beyond mere corruption. Cypher's scientists didn't just want to turn Lugia into a shadow Pokémon, they wanted to invert its very essence. You see, Lugia's nature is built on restraint. It holds back the winds, it quiets the waves, it chooses stillness over destruction. That restraint, that self-control, is its greatest strength and also its only weakness. Cypher understood that if you could remove the restraint, what remained would be pure, undirected fury. And so the Shadow Lugia was born. In the game Pokémon XD, Gale of Darkness, this entity is referred to as XD01. The XD stands for extra dangerous, and it is a chilling sight. Its eyes burn red, its feathers are darkened, and its aura is one of constant seething rage. It has no will of its own, no memory of the deep, no connection to the Ecruteak legend, is reduced to a battery of kinetic terror, programmed to obey the highest bidder. Cypher's plan was to sell this ultimate weapon, a creature whose very psychic presence could shatter cities, whose wings could summon storms that would not cease until everything was flat. But the corruption went deeper than physical. The Silver Guardian had been twisted into something that no longer knew what it protected. It became a mirror of what humans had done to the Brass Tower all those years ago. A beautiful, powerful being consumed by fire. Only this time there was no Ho descend to restore it. The only path left was purification. Purification in the Ore games is not a simple heal. It is a painstaking process of reawakening the heart. The heart. Through battle and effort and emotional connection, you slowly chip away at the dark crust around the Pokémon's spirit. For a normal Shadow Pokémon, this might take a few battles. For Shadow Lugia required far more. It required the destruction of everything Cypher had built, the unleashing of its sealed power in a final confrontation, and a moment of grace that could only come from a bond strong enough to cut through the noise. When you finally face Shadow Lugia in the game, its cry is not a roar of defiance. It is a shriek of agony. It isn't fighting you, it's fighting itself. And when you begin the purification sequence, you see the creature's original form flicker back into existence, as if the true Lugia is still there, buried beneath miles of forced darkness. The process is a return, a restoration of the Guardian's original peaceful nature. It is in its own way a resurrection mirroring Ho-Oh's act in the tower fire, but this time the dead never actually died. They were only buried. The significance of purification here cannot be overstated. It tells us that Lugia's gentle side is not a weakness to be exploited, but a core that cannot be erased. Cypher believed they could weaponize restraint by removing it, but they failed to understand that restraint is Lugia's identity, not just its behavior. Without restraint, Lugia is not more powerful, it is broken, and when it is whole again, it chooses to return to the sea, to its silence, to its watchful duty. It forgives. This is the Lugia we know, the one who withdrew after the fire at Brass Tower, not from cowardice, but from a deep understanding that some wounds need distance to heal. And in the Ore region, it proved that even the deepest shadow can be lifted. The Silver Guardian can be corrupted, but it can be reclaimed. It can become itself again. But Ho-Oh's story has its own parallel of searching, of seeking something that seems forever just out of reach. If Lugia's arc is about returning to what was, O's is about moving toward what could be. A search for eternal happiness that may have no end, but which illuminates the journey with every beat of its rainbow wings. That is where we go next. We saw Shadow Lugia, a creature twisted by human ambition into a violent mockery of its true nature. That violation speaks to something deeper about the bond between legend and those who seek it. But there is another side to that relationship, one that promises not corruption, but eternal happiness. And it belongs to the one who flies above the clouds, whose feathers shimmer with every color of the light spectrum. Ho-Oh. Consider the Pokédex entries that describe those who lay eyes upon Ho-Oh. In Pokémon Silver and its remake Soul Silver, the text reads, "It will reveal itself before a pure-hearted trainer by shining its bright rainbow-colored wings." In Heart Gold, the entry says, "Its feathers come in 7 colors. It is said that anyone seeing it is promised eternal happiness." This is a remarkable claim. Not just good fortune, not a fleeting moment of joy, but eternal happiness. The promise is absolute, unconditional, and permanent. But what does it mean to be the one standing in that rainbow light? To be chosen by a being that holds the key to everlasting contentment. The burden of being that trainer is immense. You are not simply catching a powerful Pokémon. You are being validated by a deity. Ho-Oh does not reveal itself to the boastful or the greedy. It appears only to someone with a pure heart, a soul untainted by selfish ambition. In the games, the player must earn the rainbow wing, often by proving their worth through a long journey, through helping others, through respecting the bonds between humans and Pokémon. And even then, Ho-Oh remains hidden atop the bell tower, waiting for the worthy one to climb the spiral staircase and face it in battle. That battle is not a test of strength alone. It is a final confirmation that you are worthy of the gift. This is why Ho-Oh remains one of the most elusive and rarely seen Pokémon in the entire canon. Its appearances are not random. They are carefully orchestrated by fate and intention. In the anime, Ash Ketchum sees Ho-Oh in the very first episode, flying over the Pallet Town sky. That moment was a promise to the viewer, a signal that this world held wonders beyond comprehension. But Ash never catches it. He never even attempts to. He simply witnesses it, and that sighting becomes the seed of his entire journey. The anime never explains what that moment meant for his soul, but the implication is clear. He was marked. He was set apart. He carries that eternal happiness with him, even if he does not fully understand it. In the games, you have to go to Johto, climb the bell tower and prove yourself. But even then, the encounter is optional. You can choose to never face Ho-Oh. You can leave it in legend. That choice itself is part of the philosophy. The Bird of Rainbows does not force its blessing upon anyone. It offers it. And only those who are ready to accept it, who understand that eternal happiness is not a possession but a state of being, can truly receive it. What does it mean to be chosen? To be the one who sees the rainbow after the fire? It means you carry a responsibility. You become a living symbol of renewal for everyone who hears your story. The legendary beasts, Raikou, Entei, Suicune, they are Ho-Oh's living legacy, but you, the trainer, become its human legacy. You become the proof that hope can survive catastrophe, that joy can emerge from ashes, that the eternal promise is real. And yet, Ho-Oh remains distant. It does not dwell among humans. It does not appear at every tournament or every crisis. It stays in the high places, in the sky, in the tower, watching, waiting. This elusiveness is not cruelty. It is reverence. Ho withholds itself so that the moment of meeting remains sacred, so that the promise of eternal happiness does not become cheapened by familiarity. It is a gift so rare that it can only be given once, and only to those who truly deserve it. But what of Lugia? Where does it wait? We have seen its withdrawal into the depths, its silence after the fire, and in that silence, there is a different kind of promise. Not one of joy, but of solitude. of guardianship in the dark. We will descend into that ocean of stillness in our next chapter, where the weight of the world rests on the wings of a creature that chose to hide. The Oceanic Trench. Lugia's solitude awaits, and in its depths, we may find the answer to a question that has lingered since the towers burned, but where Ho-Oh's promise of eternal joy draws trainers to the skies. Eyes fixed on the horizon, there is another presence that demands the opposite, a descent into the abyss. For every rainbow that arcs across the heavens, there is a pressure so immense in the ocean's depths that light itself cannot reach it. And in that silent, crushing darkness dwells Lugia, the guardian who chose to vanish. To understand why Lugia inhabits a world of perpetual twilight, we must first look at the very items that unlock its presence in the games. The Deep-Sea Tooth and Deep-Sea Scale. These are not mere trinkets. In the lore of the Hoenn region, the Deep-Sea Tooth and Deep-Sea Scale are held by two ancient Pokémon. The Deep-Sea Tooth belongs to the dragon-like Huntail, and the Deep-Sea Scale to the serpentine Gorobis. But their connection to Lugia is far more than a simple evolutionary trigger. The tooth is sharp, jagged, a symbol of predatory power, of the raw destructive force that lurks in the trenches. The scale is smooth, reflective, a symbol of containment and protection. Together, they mirror Lugia's own duality, a being of immense, storm-racking fury, yet one that chooses restraint. Pokédex entries across generations hint at this paradox. Lugia's wings are said to have the power to cause devastating gales with a single flap. In the depths, however, that power is muffled by the weight of the sea. The ocean becomes Lugia's cage and its shield. The Deep-Sea Tooth represents the unchecked aggression that could tear ships apart. The Deep-Sea Scale represents the calming barrier that keeps that fury in check. Lugia's biology is not simply that of a flying creature adapted to water. It is a creature of extremes, a living paradox that must hold its own tempest inside a fragile vessel of flesh and feather. This is why Lugia chooses isolation. It is not a punishment, not a sulking exile, like some might interpret from the brass tower fire. It is a deliberate, solemn guardianship. Lugia knows that its presence above the surface would reshape the world, not through malice, but through sheer, uncontrollable force. Every beat of its wings would generate storms that could level cities. Every cry would shake the tectonic plates. The only way to protect the fragile world of humans and Pokémon is to stay where its power is muted, where the water absorbs the shock. But there is a melancholy here. Ho-Oh can be seen. Its rainbow wings paint the sky after rain, a beacon of hope for all who look up. It is a visible promise that tragedy can give way to rebirth. Lugia, by contrast, is invisible. Its home is a trench where no sunlight penetrates, where the temperature hovers near freezing, where the pressure would crush any ordinary Pokémon instantly. The few who have glimpsed Lugia in the wild describe a silhouette against the dark, a shape more felt than seen. Its invisibility is not a curse of obscurity, but a necessity of survival. For the world, not for itself. In the anime film The Power of One, Lugia emerges only when the balance of nature is shattered by human interference. It does not seek glory. It does not want followers. It wants the world to remain stable, so that its intervention is never needed. That is the true burden of the Guardian. To be strong enough to destroy, but wise enough to remain hidden, and yet ready. And so the Deep-Sea Tooth and Deep-Sea Scale are metaphysical keys. They represent the two poles of Lugia's existence, the impulse to lash out and the discipline to remain still. When a trainer presents both to Lugia the Scale, they are showing that they understand the value of restraint. When they present the tooth, they acknowledge the danger Lugia carries. Only a trainer who comprehends both can earn Lugia's trust. This contrast with Ho-Oh sets the stage for the next leg of our journey, a thread that ties Johto and Kinto, the Johto-Kanto Connection, where the two towers, two regions and two guardians will finally reveal how their myths intertwine across the landmass of an entire continent. From the crushing depths of the Oceanic Trench, where Lugia chooses to dwell in self-imposed exile, We now rise to the surface and follow the currents that connect two regions. You see, the bond between Johto and Kanto is not merely a matter of geography or political convenience. It is a bond forged in myth, sealed by fire and guarded by the very presence of the two legendary birds. And at the heart of that bond lies a curious paradox, that the most powerful force in Kanto's legendary sky might actually answer to a master from across the border. To understand this, we must first look at the landscape itself. The map of Johto and Kanto, when laid side by side, reveals a single landmass split by a spine of mountains. That spine is dominated by Mount Silver, the highest peak in either region, a silent titan that watches over both worlds. And on its eastern flank, just below the summit, sits the Indigo Plateau, the ultimate proving ground for every trainer who dreams of becoming a champion. But what does this geography mean for Ho-Oh and Lugia? Why should the location of a mountain and a league matter to creatures that dwell in the sky and the sea? The answer lies in the concept of influence. The Indigo Plateau is not just a building, it is a nexus of human ambition, where trainers from both Johto and Kanto gather to test their strength, and Mount Silver, with its treacherous slopes and legendary aura, serves as a natural barrier that both separates and unites the two regions. For Ho-Oh, whose rainbow wings are said to herald eternal happiness, the proximity of this sacred mountain to the League creates a fascinating dynamic. The mountain is a place of isolation, of ultimate challenge. Only the strongest trainers ever set foot there, and yet the League below is a place of constant motion, of hope and striving. Ho-Oh's domain is the sky, but its mythos is rooted in the human world, in the promise that those who are worthy might catch a glimpse of its radiance. So the mountain and the plateau become a stage. The mountain represents the unreachable, the plateau the reachable, and Ho-Oh hovers between them, a symbol of the journey itself. Lugia, on the other hand, is far removed from this human theatre. Its power is oceanic, its presence felt in storms and tidal shifts. But even the sea knows the pull of the land. The whirlpools of the Whirl Islands, where Lugia resides in the games, lie off the coast of Johto, but they are not far from the waters that lap at Kanto's shores. And connecting these two bodies of water, the seas of Johto and the seas of Kanto, is a hidden passage, a waterfall that is as much a boundary as it is a bridge. I am speaking, of course, of the Tojo Falls. The Tojo Falls, a name that itself blends the syllables of both regions, is the physical link between Johto and Kanto. In the games, it is the passage you must traverse to move from one region to the other. But in lore, it is far more. These falls are a threshold. They mark the point where the influence of Ho-Oh and Lugia overlap, where the sky of Johto meets the horizon of Kanto. Water falls from a high plateau into the river below, and legend says that the mist that rises from the Tojo Falls sometimes shimmers with a rainbow hue. Those who have seen it describe it as a veil between worlds, and it is here that the deep lore begins to reveal itself. You see, the legendary birds of Kanto, Articuno, Zapdos and Moltres, are often thought of as the masters of their respective elements, but their power is raw, almost primal. They answer to no one, except perhaps to the forces that awakened them. However, in the shadowy corners of Pokémon mythology, there is a persistent notion that the birds of Johto, Ho-Oh and Lugia are the true masters of the Kanto legendary birds. Why? Because the Kanto birds represent fragments of nature, ice, electricity, fire, but Ho-Oh and Lugia represent the cycles that govern those fragments. Ho-Oh is rebirth, the phoenix that rises from ashes, and its rainbow is not just light, but a promise of order after destruction. Lugia is the calm after the storm, the deep silence that controls the chaos of wind and wave. The Kanto birds are forces. The Johto birds are the hands that guide those forces. And there is a physical evidence for this hierarchy. In the anime film, The Power of One, Lugia is shown as the only one who can pacify the three titans when they rage out of control. But the games themselves hint at this connection in the original Gold and Silver. The Kanto legendary birds are found scattered across their home region, but they are not the ultimate challenge. The true test is Ho-Oh at the top of the bell tower and Lugia deep within the Whirl Islands. And when you capture them, you are not just catching a Pokémon, you are claiming a piece of the myth that binds two regions together. The Indigo Plateau, being so close to Mount Silver, becomes the perfect place for trainers to feel the weight of that myth. It is no accident that the final battle of the Johto League is held with the shadow up the mountain looming in the background. The mountain holds the memory of the towers, of the fire, of the rebirth, and the plateau below holds the memory of every trainer who ever sought to prove themselves worthy of a rainbow's blessing. So what does this mean for Ho-Oh and Lugia's influence on Kanto? It means that they are not foreign gods. They are the true gods of the Kanto bird, so not the apex. They are the servants of a deeper design. The Tojo Falls is the throat through which the power of Johto flows into Kanto, and Mount Silver is the silent witness to that flow. The mountains, the plateau, the waterfalls. They are all part of a network that connects the two regions, a network that Ho-Oh and Lugia have always understood. They do not need to rule Kanto directly. They rule the forces that Kanto fears, and perhaps that is why, when you stand at the edge of the Tojo Falls and look down at the mist rising, you feel a strange sense of being watched. The water roars, the wind carries the scent of pines, and somewhere beyond the horizon, a rainbow might be forming. It is a reminder that every region's story is tied to another, and as we prepare to close this chapter, we must look forward to the next stage of the journey, because the relationship between Ho-Oh and Lugia is not just about connection, it is about evolution. How did these two legendary birds, born in Johto, become the template for every box mascot that followed? That is a story we will unravel in the next part of our tale, as we examine how the idea of a paired legendary was refined, distorted, and reimagined across generations. The evolution of the box mascot is not just about design. It is about how myth itself can be packaged and sold, and you will not want to miss how it all began. From the Tojo Falls, where the waters of Kanto and Johto meet in a quiet cascade, there is a sense of convergence, a merging of two worlds that had once been separate. That waterfall is more than a geographical landmark. It is a symbol of a threshold, a place where the echoes of one generation's victories flow into the myths of another. And it is here, at this boundary, that we can begin to understand how the very idea of a legendary Pokémon changed forever. Because before Johto, before the gold of Ho-Oh and the silver of Lugia, legendary Pokémon were secrets. They were hidden away at the end of caves, buried in post-game content, or glimpsed only in fleeting moments. Mewtwo was the ultimate prize of the original games, but you would never know it from looking at the box. The cover of Pokémon Red and Blue featured a Charizard, a creature that any trainer could obtain through a starter Pokémon. The legendaries of that generation were not the face of the journey. They were the reward for completing it. That all changed with Pokémon Gold and Silver, and the shift was not just a marketing decision. It was a storytelling revolution. For the first time, the two version-exclusive legendaries of a generation were placed front and center. Ho-Oh and Lugia were not afterthoughts. They were the very reason to choose one version over the other, and more importantly, they came with deep narrative roots that made that choice feel meaningful. The gold and silver dichotomy was a stroke of genius. Gold was the color of the sun, of resurrection, of the phoenix that rises from ashes. Silver was the color of the moon, of the deep sea, of the guardian who holds back the storm. You were not simply picking a different color cartridge. You were aligning yourself with a philosophy. You were deciding which half of the Johto myth you wanted to embody. This was a profound departure from Generation 1. In Kanto, the legendaries, Articuno, Zapdos, Moltres, Mewtwo, Mew, were scattered like Easter eggs. They had lore, yes, but it was cryptic and often detached from the player's journey. You could beat the Elite Four without ever knowing that 3 birds guarded the caves and cliffs of the region. Mewtwo existed as a lab experiment, a tragic figure, but you had to go out of your way to find him. The story of the game did not revolve around these creatures. The story of the game was about becoming champion. In Johto, the story was about a legend that had not yet ended. The towers of Ecruteak, the fire that consumed them, the 3 Pokémon that died and were reborn. This was not optional lore, it was woven into the fabric of the region. And the 2 Pokémon at the center of that myth, Ho-Oh and Lugia, were waiting for you at the climax of your journey. They were not secrets to be discovered after the credits rolled. They were the culmination of everything you had been promised from the very moment you chose your version. The marketing genius of the gold and silver dichotomy lies in how it turned a commercial decision into a personal narrative. You did not just buy a game, you accepted a call. If you chose gold, you were choosing the bird of rainbows and rebirth, the one who descends from heaven to restore what was lost. If you chose silver, you were choosing the bird of the depths and storms, the one who withdraws to protect the world from its own power. The box art told you who you were before you ever pressed start, and the story inside that box fulfilled that promise. When you finally faced Ho-Oh atop the bell tower, or descended into the Whirl Islands to meet Lugia, it felt like you had reached the end of a myth that had been told in pieces throughout your journey. The old man in Ecruteak, the burned tower, the encounters with Raikou and Entei and Suicune, everything pointed toward this moment. This set a standard that every generation after would follow. Ruby and Sapphire gave us Groudon and Kyogre, the forces of land and sea, locked in an eternal conflict that defined the region. Diamond and Pearl gave us Dialga and Palkia, the masters of time and space, whose clash threatened to unravel reality. Each new pair of cover legendaries carried the weight of a narrative that was exclusive to the version you chose. You were not just buying a different colour, you were buying a different story, and it all started here with Ho-Oh and Lugia. They were the first to prove that a version exclusive legendary could be more than a colour swap. They could be the heart of the region's identity. The shift from Mewtwo as a secret to Ho-Oh as a symbol is a shift in how Pokémon tells its stories. It is a shift from exploration as discovery to exploration as destiny. In Kanto, you stumbled upon greatness. In Johto, you were chosen for it. And that is why, when the waters of Tojo Falls pour into the heart of the Indigo Plateau, they carry not just the memory of a past victory, but the promise of a new kind of legend. A legend that would be rewritten again in ways that no one expected. Because even the most steadfast of myths can be reborn, and even the most iconic of heroes can begin again. That is the story of one bird in particular. A story that would not end with Johto, but would find a new beginning in a timeline where everything started differently. A timeline where the rainbow itself would take on a new and deeply personal meaning. In the previous chapter, we saw how Ho-Oh and Lugia set the standard for version. Exclusive legendaries with deep narrative roots, transforming them from hidden secrets into the very face of the journey. But there is one film that takes that concept even further, rewinding the clock to reimagine Ho-Oh's role from the very first steps of a trainer's career. That film is Pokémon the movie. I Choose You, and it presents an alternate universe where the rainbow bird becomes not just a distant promise, but a destination. In this timeline, Ash Ketchum's journey begins much the same way. He oversleeps, starts with a reluctant Pikachu, and encounters the legendary Ho-Oh, soaring above Pallet Town within his first hours as a trainer. But from there, the story diverges dramatically. The entire quest is now defined by Ash's vow to meet Ho-Oh face to face, to become the Rainbow Hero. This is no longer a casual sighting, it is a calling. The film re-examines Ho-Oh's role in Ash's life by making the bird a tangible goal, a reward for a pure heart, and a test of character that spans the entire first region. What makes this retelling so intriguing is the introduction of a new figure intertwined with the Ho-Oh myth, Marshadow, the Shadow Guide. In this story, Marshadow acts as a hidden guardian of the Rainbow Hero's legacy, observing trainers who seek Ho-Oh and determining if their intentions are true. It can step into shadows, mimic movements, and even possess others. Its presence adds a layer of mystical judgment to the encounter. Ash and his companions soon learn that meeting Ho-Oh is not simply a matter of following a map. It requires proving oneself worthy, and Marshadow is the silent gatekeeper who watches from the dark. And that brings us to the darker side of the Ho-Oh myth. What happens when a corrupted heart seeks the bird? In the film, a trainer named Cross pursues Ho-Oh, not out of wonder, but out of obsession and bitterness. He wants to capture the legendary, to prove his own strength, to fill an emptiness left by loss. And he finally forces an encounter. His poisoned intent causes the sacred ash of the rainbow wing to react violently. Ho-Oh itself appears, but instead of granting a blessing, it unleashes a searing glare that nearly destroys everything around it. The creature that promises eternal happiness to the pure-hearted becomes a force of judgment for the wicked. It is a chilling reminder that Ho-Oh is not a passive prize. It is a moral mirror. A heart tainted by selfishness cannot grasp the rainbow without being burned. This alternative universe thus cements Ho-Oh's dual nature, the phoenix of rebirth and the arbiter of worth. As Ash ultimately proves his bond and his selflessness, Ho-Oh accepts him, and Marshadow fades into the shadows satisfied. The film leaves us with the image of Ho-Oh flying into the sunset, the rainbow trailing behind it, a symbol of hope for those who earn it. But if Ho-Oh is the guardian of the sky and of hearts, then Lugia is the guardian of the mind and of the abyss, and in the hidden depths of the ocean, where pressure crushes and no light reaches, Lugia wields a power far more subtle than fire or flight. That power is psychic, and it connects everything beneath the waves. Next, we will dive into Lugia's psychic prowess, exploring how this silent sovereign of the sea controls storms not with wings but with will, and what that means for the balance it protects. In that alternate timeline, Ash Ketchum's bond with Ho-Oh was forged through tragedy and hope, a rainbow appearing exactly when it was needed most. But while Ho-Oh represents the power of renewal, its counterpart Lugia embodies something far quieter and more terrifying, the power of restraint. The question has always lingered among fans and scholars alike. Is Lugia a psychic type instead of a water type? After all, it dwells in the deepest trenches of the ocean, commands storms, and is visually linked to the sea. The answer lies not in element but in mind. Lugia's true strength is mental discipline over raw elemental force. The ocean is merely its home, not its nature. Water is chaotic, ever moving and driven by tides and wind. It is a force that reacts, but Lugia does not react, it chooses. Every surge of its wings could trigger a hurricane. Every flick of its tail could send shockwaves through the seabed, and yet it remains still. That stillness is not weakness. It is the pinnacle of psychic control. Where a water type would simply command the waves, Lugia suppresses the very impulse to do so. This is why the games classify it as psychic. Its power is not about hurling water or ice. It is about bending reality with the sheer weight of its mind. Telekinesis, telepathy, precognition. These are the tools of a being that must calculate every movement lest it shatter the world around it. Imagine the concentration required to live the bottom of the sea, where the pressure alone will crush lesser creatures. Lugia does not merely survive there, it thrives because its psychic aura holds back the ocean itself. That barrier is not made of scales or muscle, it is made of will, and that will extends beyond itself. Lugia is one of the rare Pokémon capable of communicating telepathically with both humans and other Pokémon without the need for spoken language. In the anime film The Power of One, it speaks directly to Ash, not in words but in feelings and images that bypass the limitations of speech. This is not a trick or a learned skill, it is an innate mode of existence. Lugia perceives the world through thought, not sound. Every creature near it is heard as a mental echo, a pattern of emotion and intention. That is why it can calm the legendary birds. Not by overpowering them with waves, but by projecting a psychic frequency that soothes their rage. It is a mediator, not a warrior, but such a gift comes with a terrible burden. Lugia's telekinetic power is so immense that, if it ever lost control, the ocean floor itself would be torn apart. The geological stability of the Whirl Islands, the very foundation of its sanctuary, rests on Lugia's constant vigilance. Every tremor it causes, every ripple it creates, is a deliberate act of measured force. One lapse in concentration, one moment of anger or fear, and the seabed could crack open, unleashing tsunamis that would swallow entire coastlines. That is why Lugia withdrew after the brass tower burned. Not out of shame, but out of necessity. Being near humans, being emotionally entangled in their tragedies, risked undermining the discipline it must maintain. So Lugia lives in solitude, not because it hates companionship, but because its psychic prowess demands a life of extreme control. Every day is a meditation, every breath a calculation. It is a being of immense power that chooses to be gentle, and that choice is the very definition of psychic mastery. As different as Lugia and Ho-Oh are, they both carry the weight of their own legends. But while Ho-Oh's flame is visible from miles away, Lugia's fire burns inward. The question of which force is stronger, the sacred fire of rebirth or the aeroblast of psychic restraint, has never been answered. And perhaps that is because the answer changes, depending on who is watching. In the next chapter, we will explore that very clash. The sacred fire versus the aeroblast, and what happens when two mythologies collide. We learned in the last chapter that Lugia, he is a being of immense mental discipline, a psychic type, not because it lacks water affinity, but because its mind must constantly restrain its own destructive potential. That restraint is written into its very existence, and nowhere is it more visible than in the move that defines it, Aeroblast. If you have ever stood on a shoreline and watched a wave retreat, you have seen the ghost of what Aeroblast does. It is not a simple gust of wind. It is a concentrated vacuum of air, a collapsing pocket of nothingness that Lugia fires from its mouth, like a spear of pure emptiness. The move is unique to Lugia, a signature technique that has appeared in every generation since its introduction. But what does it actually mean? In the games, Aeroblast is a high crit ratio move, meaning it tends to land devastating blows more often than most. That mechanical quirk tells us something profound about Lugia's lore. Its attacks are not just powerful, they are precise, surgical, and merciless when they connect. The imagery around Aeroblast is often described as a spiraling beam of compressed air, but think about what that represents spatially. A vacuum is a place where nothing exists. It is the opposite of the living world. And where does Lugia dwell? In the deep sea, a realm where light cannot reach, where pressure crushes everything, and where, in a sense, the very emptiness of the abyss becomes a physical force. Aeroblast is that abyss given form. It is the silence of the ocean depths weaponized. When Lugia unleashes this attack, it is not simply blowing its opponent away. It is imposing the solitude of its own home upon them. Now contrast that with the move that belongs to Ho-Oh, Sacred Fire. Where Aeroblast is a vacuum, Sacred Fire is a blaze that purifies. In the games, Sacred Fire has a chance to burn the target, a status condition that saps health over time. But the name itself tells a deeper story. This is not ordinary fire. It is a flame that has been blessed, sanctified, made holy. In many mythologies, fire is a dual symbol. It can destroy, but it can also cleanse. Sacred Fire leans heavily into the latter, when Ho-Oh descends from the heavens trailing rainbow light. The fire that surrounds it does not consume indiscriminately. It burns away only what is unworthy, what is corrupt, what is false. Think back to the legend of the brass tower. When the lightning struck and the tower burned for 3 days, 3 Pokémon perished in that inferno. But that fire was mundane. It was a tragedy. Then Ho-Oh arrived and resurrected those 3 souls, transforming them into the legendary beasts. The act of revival itself could be seen as a sacred fire, a purifying flame that took the ashes of death and forged new life from them. Ho-Oh's fire is not a weapon of war. It is a tool of judgment and renewal. It selects, it refines, it burns away the unworthy so that only the worthy remain. And so we arrive at the competitive comparison, as these two moves are not just lore-rich. They are mechanically distinct in ways that reveal each Pokémon's philosophy. Aeroblast trades sheer brute power for reliability. It has a higher critical hit ratio, meaning it is designed to find weak points. to exploit vulnerabilities. That mirrors Lugia's role as a guardian, who waits in the depths, observing, calculating, and then striking with sudden, overwhelming precision. Sacred Fire, meanwhile, has a chance to burn, which is a lingering punishment. It is not about finishing the fight instantly. It is about marking the opponent, tainting them with fire that refuses to go out. Ho-Oh's way is to test, to purify through persistence. But there is another layer. In the lore of the games, both moves are exclusive to their respective legendaries, and both are often central to their competitive viability. Aeroblast gives Lugia a reliable stab attack that can break through defensive walls, while Sacred Fire gives Ho-Oh a powerful fire-type move that also cripples physical attackers with the burn. Yet beyond the numbers, these moves tell us who these beings are. Lugia's Aeroblast is a controlled expulsion of emptiness, the same emptiness it carries in its heart after withdrawing from humanity. Ho-Oh's Sacred Fire is a beacon of judgment, the same flame that once restored 3 souls because Ho-Oh saw worth in a tragedy. It is no accident that these two moves are often presented as counterparts. In the Generation 2 games, each version exclusive came with its own signature move. Sacred Fire was exclusive to Gold and Heart Gold, while Aeroblast belonged to Silver and Soul Silver. The designers deliberately gave each a distinct flavor. One is light, one is void. One is rebirth, one is restraint. One burns hot enough to purify, the other is cold enough to silence. And if you ever watch them side by side in battle, you see a kind of dialogue. The rainbow phoenix trailing flames against the sea dragon's spiral of compressed air. They are not enemies. They are two answers to the same question. What do you do with power? Ho uses it to forge meaning from loss. Lugia uses it to protect the world from itself. There is an essay to be written about how each move reflects its user's nature. Aeroblast is the attack of a creature that has learned to hold back. Lugia's wings are so powerful that a single flap can cause storms, so it rarely flies. Its signature move, then, is a way to focus that vast energy into a single, contained projectile. It is the explosion of a being that has been holding its breath for centuries. Sacred Fire, by contrast, is the attack of a creature that has already given everything. Ho-Oh gave the legendary beasts life. It gave the world a rainbow. Its fire is a gift even when it burns. It does not hold back because it has already spent itself in service of creation. And so tonight, as you lie here and let these images settle, consider the spaces these moves occupy, the deep-sea vacuum of Aeroblast, the purifying light of Sacred Fire. They are not just game mechanics. They are the signature statements of their bearers. They are the reason Ho-Oh is seen in the sky only by those who are pure of heart, and why Lugia is rarely seen at all. One move judges, the other withdraws. One calls out, the other disappears. But before we descend further into the mystery of Lugia's depths, there is another transformation waiting for us. The tower in Ecruteak City that once held bell chimes and hopes. What happened to it after the fire? How did a place of worship become a ruin? And what secrets lie in its broken timbers? That is the story we will uncover next, in the Tin Tower's transformation. For now, let the image of Sacred Fire and Aeroblast fade like embers in the dark, and let your mind drift toward the next chapter, where a different kind of burning awaits. I hope you're as amazed by this as I am. If you want to stay updated on more content like this, make sure to subscribe and join our community of curious minds. Trust me, what's coming next will challenge everything you thought you knew. Sacred Fire burns with purifying light, yet its flame alone cannot restore what was lost. The Aeroblast channels raw will into a focused gale, but even that cannot rebuild what crumbles. There is a place in the Johto region, a tower that has known both ash and renewal, a structure that has changed its very name across the ages. And tonight we climb it, not with footsteps, but with the quiet understanding of how a monument can transform just as profoundly as any mythical bird. In the original games, when you first arrived at Ecruteak City, you faced a choice. The tower that rose above the ancient town was called the Tin Tower in the English localization, a name that hinted at something metallic, and perhaps temporary, but its Japanese name, the Bell Tower, carried a deeper resonance. This was no mere alloy. This was a place of sacred architecture, built to house a divine being. The discrepancy between Tin Tower and Bell Tower is more than a translation oddity. It represents a shift in how the developers wanted us to perceive Ho-Oh's home. Tin suggests something cheap, almost disposable, yet the tower was anything but. It was a place of profound myth, a pinnacle of human craftsmanship dedicated to the Rainbow Phoenix. When the remakes arrived, Art Gold and Soul Silver, the name was corrected. The Tin Tower became the Bell Tower, and with that change, the entire feel of the location transformed. The original games had given us a structure that felt almost forgotten, its brass and tin surfaces weathered by time. But the remakes turned it into a living monument, a place where the bells of dawn and dusk could still be heard across the rooftops of Ecruteak. And it is here that we must pause to consider the seasons. In the remakes, the Bell Tower is not static. As you ascend its many floors, the view outside changes. The leaves begin to fall, drifting past the windows, drifting lazily in the autumn breeze. This is not a random graphical touch. It is a quiet statement about the nature of Ho-Oh's sacred space. The tower exists outside the ordinary flow of time, or at least outside the ordinary seasons of the world below. The falling leaves are a reminder that this is a place of transition, of endings that lead to new beginnings. Ho-Oh is the creature of the rainbow, the one who turned death into life after the brass tower burned. So it is fitting that its own tower is wrapped in the melancholy beauty of autumn. The leaves do not rot. They fall and they will return. Just as the 3 Pokémon who perished were reborn as the legendary beasts, just as Ho-Oh itself is bound to cycles far older than human memory. The falling leaves are a silent prayer, a falling note in a symphony of perpetual change. But why build so high? The Bell Tower rises hundreds of feet above Ecruteak City, its peak brushing against the clouds. In the original games, you had to climb a lengthy spiral staircase, each floor revealing a new puzzle or a new trainer. In the remakes, the climb is even more majestic, with the sense that you are ascending into a realm where gravity loosens its grip. The tower's height represents the aspiration of the human spirit. It is a ladder reaching toward the sky, a declaration that people can touch the heavens if they dare to dream. The ancients who constructed this tower did not build it for shelter, they built it as a statement. We believe something greater than ourselves, and we will climb toward it until our legs give out. Ho-Oh dwells at the top, not because it needs a perch, but because it responds to the courage it takes to climb. Every step is an act of faith. Every ringing bell is a prayer answered. Yet this tower has not always been the peaceful. Recall the brass tower, now the burned tower, that stands nearby. That tower was home to Lugia until lightning struck and fire consumed it. The Bell Tower survived that night, untouched by the flames. Some say Ho-Oh's presence protected it. Others whisper that the tower itself is a living thing, able to shed its own leaves, to shiver in the wind, to remember every footfall that has ever pressed against its floors. The transformation from Tin Tower to Bell Tower is a story of how we reimagine the past. The original games were limited by technology and translation, but the spirit was there. The remakes gave us the full vision, a tower that breathes with colour and sound, a tower that invites you to witness the falling of leaves and the rising of hope. And yet, for all the beauty of the Bell Tower, there is a mystery that still clings to its shadows. A strange object, a sphere of gold and silver, was once tied to this place. It could unlock doors that no one knows what. Its purpose remains hidden, waiting in the silence between bells. That mystery, the GS Ball, will be the subject of our next chapter, a story that weaves together time, space, and the quiet rustle of leaves falling endlessly into the past. The Tin Tower rose high above Ecruteak, a spire of wooden prayer that had seen centuries pass. But beneath its bells, something else waited. A golden sphere, small enough to hold in 2 hands, decorated with the symbols of the legendary beasts and the rainbow wing. The GS Ball, an object that appeared in the anime, the games, and the hearts of fans, only to vanish into mystery, unanswered questions, and the quiet ache of a story never fully told. This ball was not just a relic. It was meant to bridge two legends, two timelines, two mythologies that had circled each other since Generation 2. The GS ball was to be the link between the mythos of Ho-Oh and Lugia and the time-travelling forest guardian, Celebi. In the games, the GS ball was a key item, carried by the player, passed from Kurt the Apricorn Master to a mysterious figure, and then nothing. It was never opened, never explained, never resolved. The developers intended for it to unlock an encounter with Celebi in the Ilex Forest Shrine, but that event was never implemented in the original Gold and Silver. Instead, the ball sat in the player's inventory, a glowing enigma. Only later, in the remake Heart Gold and Soul Silver, was the Celebi encounter finally added. But even then, the ball itself felt like a remnant of a deeper, abandoned plan. The connection to Ho-Oh and Lugia is subtle but profound. Celebi is a being of time, a creature that can travel through eras and witness the turning of ages. In the lore of Ecruteak, the towers were built long ago. The lightning struck, the fire burned, the beasts were reborn. But what if Celebi had a hand in that? What if the GS ball was a container for a fragment of Celebi's power, or a key to the moment when the brass tower fell? Some fans speculate that the ball's gold and silver colours mirror the two towers, Bell Tower and Brass Tower, and that its purpose was to reconcile the past with the present. Ho-Oh, the Phoenix of Renewal, and Lugia, the Guardian of Storms, both are tied to time. Ho-Oh resurrects, which is a form of reversing death. Lugia withdraws, which is a form of preserving the moment. Celebi, as a time traveller, could weave between those threads, mending or severing the fabric. In the anime, the GS ball took on a life of its own. It was a central plot element in the Johto saga, carried by Ash and Misty, studied by Professor Elm, and eventually given to Kurt to analyse. The ball was said to contain a mysterious power, perhaps even an egg, but it never hatched. The anime writers, like the game developers, left the storyline unresolved. The ball was simply placed in a lab, never revisited. This abandonment became a legend itself, a running joke among fans, a symbol of narrative dead ends. But beneath the frustration, there is a fascination. Why would two separate media, games and anime, both dangle such a powerful object and then let it vanish? The answer lies in the original design intent. The GS ball was meant to bridge between the legendary birds and the mythical time traveller. It was to show that the story of Ecruteak was not isolated. Celebi, the voice of the forest, the watcher of centuries, had seen the fire. Perhaps it held the memory of the 3 Pokémon that died. Perhaps it held a fragment of Ho-Oh's power that could only be unlocked by a time traveller from another time. Lugia too, in its deep-sea retreat, might have felt the ripple of that temporal disturbance. The GS ball was more than a key. It was a symbol that all myths are connected, and yet the bridge was never built. The ball sits in the archives of unfinished stories, but its legacy is not empty. The fan community has taken this lost lore and woven it into theories, fan fiction, and analytical videos. They have speculated about what the ball contained. A Celebi egg, a fragment of the rainbow wing, a piece of the sacred ash, or even a message from the future. Some believe the ball was a prison for a corrupted version of Celebi, or a device that could summon Ho-Oh and Lugia together. The mystery itself has become a treasure, a reminder that not all questions need answers, but the impact is real. The GS ball, though never resolved, taught fans to pay attention to the details, to read between the lines of Pokédex entries and dialogue. It is one of the reasons why the lore of the deep lore analysis exists today. It is a ghost story told around the campfire of fandom, a story that keeps giving because it never ends. Now, as we move toward the final chapters of this journey, we will see that the legacy of Ho-Oh and Lugia extends far beyond Johto. They shaped the way other regions approached their own legends. From the towers of Kalos to the eclipse of Alola, the echoes of the rainbow and the storm ripple outward. But before we cross into that broader world, remember the golden ball, still waiting in some corner of the Pokémon universe. holding a story that might one day be told. That is Chapter 22. Cultural impact across other regions, the ripples that never fade. The mystery of the GS Ball remains one of the most elusive objects in Pokémon lore, remains without a definitive answer, a relic of a planned narrative that was never fully realized. Yet even as that golden sphere faded from the mainline games, its very existence hinted at a deeper connection between time-space and the two legendary birds that defined the Johto region. The ball was meant to bridge the present with the ancient history, and the future it seemed to hold a fragment of Celebi's power, but that thread was abandoned. However, the influence of Ho-Oh and Lugia did not end with that lost story. Their impact spread far beyond the towers of Ecruteak City, reaching into the climate, the geography, and the very mythic structure of regions that would come after. In the Hoenn region far to the south of Johto, the echoes of the duo can be felt in the land itself. The ancient legends of Hoenn speak of a great battle between Groudon, who expanded the continents, and Kyogre, who swelled the oceans. This conflict between land and sea, between expansion and deluge, mirrors in many ways the quiet complementary opposition of Ho-Oh and Lugia, but the connection is not merely thematic. In earlier generations of gameplay, a remote island known as Naval Rock was discovered in the Sevi Islands, an archipelago south of Kanto. This tiny isolated peak served as a shared nesting ground for both Ho-Oh and Lugia, a place where the two legendary birds could be encountered side by side. The existence of Naval Rock is a quiet testament to the idea that they are enemies, are they allies question. They are not rivals. They are counterpart forces that can coexist in the same space when the conditions are right, a spiritual resting place where sky and sea touch. Travel north to Sinnoh, and the influence changes form. Here the creation trio of Dialga Palkia and Giratina embody a more abstract cosmic duality, time and space, separated by an underworld of antimatter. But the legacy of Ho-Oh and Lugia is visible in the way Sinnoh treats its own legendary guardians. The lake trio Uxie, Mesprit and Azelf were born from the same primordial being, just as the legendary beasts were born from Ho-Oh's act of resurrection. And the idea of a single chosen pair, one of fire and one of water, one of renewal and one of restraint, is echoed in the later mythos of Reshiram and Zekrom in Unova, the forces of truth and ideals, which again reclaim the pattern of a fire-based bird and a more shadowy counterpart. The duality has simply grown more abstract, more philosophical. The weather trio of Hoenn, Groudon, Kyogre and Rayquaza is perhaps the most direct descendant of the Johto duo in terms of elemental control. Ho-Oh governs the sky, fire, rainbow, gave rise to the concept of a legendary that governs the atmosphere and the warmth of life. Lugia Sea Storm, calm, gave rise to the idea of a legendary that controls the depths and the destructive power of weather. But where Ho-Oh and Lugia are a pair, the weather trio introduces a third party, a peacemaker in the sky. Rayquaza stands above the conflict just as Lugia once stood above the storm and Ho-Oh stood above the fire. The lineage is clear, the pattern of two opposing domains mediated by a higher force was already implicitly present in the relationship between the Johto duo. They were never enemies. That is the core insight that shaped everything that followed. And this theme of opposing forces, finding a sun and a moon, a sky and a sea, a fire that heals, and a storm that soothes, finds its most elegant and profound expression in the symbolism of the sun and the moon themselves. The next chapter will uncover that full meaning. As we saw with Ho-Oh and Lugia's influence reaching far beyond Johto, their symbolic power echoed through every region that followed. But perhaps the most profound aspect of their legacy is not just where they appear, but what they represent, the sun and the moon. It is a duality that runs so deep through Pokémon history that it was there from the very beginning, hidden in the earliest prototypes of these two legendary birds. In the original design documents for Pokémon Gold and Silver, Ho-Oh and Lugia were not simply a phoenix and a sea guardian. They were conceived as celestial opposites. Ho-Oh was intended to embody the sun, light, warmth, renewal, the source of life. Lugia was its counterpart, representing the moon, shadow, depth, calm, the rhythm of the tides. This was a bold vision for a pair of legendaries at the time. The sun and moon were ancient symbols, universal to nearly every culture on Earth, and embedding them into the heart of Johto would have given the region a mythic weight that matched its towers and its stories. But when the games were finalized, this explicit solar and lunar symbolism was softened. Ho-Oh retained its rainbow and phoenix mythology, still tied to light and rebirth, but no longer directly called a sun deity. Lugia became associated with storms and the sea, a guardian of balance rather than a moon spirit. The original plan was never completely abandoned, however, it was simply deferred. The day and night cycle introduced in Gold and Silver was the first real-time clock in a Pokémon game, and it was no accident. When the sun rose over Johto, Ho-Oh's domain felt brighter. When the moon cast silver light across the ocean, Lugia's presence seemed closer. The entire region became a tribute to the duo's influence. Even if players didn't always notice, it would take nearly 2 decades for Pokémon to fully embrace that original vision. Generation 7 brought us Solgaleo and Lunala, the literal sun and moon Pokémon themselves. Solgaleo, a psychic and steel type, radiates the light of a star. Lunala, psychic and ghost, draws its power from the moon's phases. Their mythology is woven directly into the fabric of Alola, and in many ways, they are the realized form of what Ho-Oh and Lugia were meant to be. But that doesn't diminish the older pair. If anything, it completes a circle. Solgaleo and Lunala inherited the mantle, but the seed was planted in Johto, in the towers that watched over the cycle of day and night, in the bell that tolled for the sun and the brass that shone like moonlight. The connection runs deeper than design. When you stand at the top of Bell Tower in Heart Gold and Soul Silver, you can hear the wind chimes, those soft, metallic tones that mark the passage of time. They sound different at dawn than they do at dusk, and in the Burn Tower below, the silence holds a different weight after sunset. The music of the towers, in fact, was composed to reflect this very duality, and it tells a story all its own, one of loss, of hope, and of the eternal dance between light and darkness. That is exactly what we will explore in the next chapter. The sun and the moon, light and shadow, the cycle that defines our days and nights. In the previous chapter, we explored how Ho-Oh and Lugia were once envisioned as embodiments of those celestial forces, a duality that would later find its fullest expression in a Unova legend, or, more directly, in the radiant Solgaleo and the cryptic Lunala of Alola. But before those designs ever reached their final forms, the Johto region gave us something else. A pair of towers, a story of fire and water, and a soundtrack that would forever anchor their myth in the hearts of players. It's one thing to read about the Bell Tower and the Whirl Islands in a Pokédex entry. It's another to stand before them in the game, to let the music wash over you. The melodies that accompany these sacred locations are not mere background ambience. They are deliberate, layered compositions designed to pull you into a world that feels older than Johto itself, older than any human memory. If you listen closely, you can hear the centuries. Let's begin with the Bell Tower. When you climb its spiraling interior in Pokémon Heart Gold and Soul Silver, a deeply resonant theme begins to play. The piece is built around a slow, almost prayer-like melody. It doesn't rush. It rises and falls like incense smoke drifting through a temple hall. The instrument doing most of that work is unmistakably a koto, a traditional Japanese zither, with a sound that is both delicate and assertive. Its notes are plucked and then allowed to vibrate, creating a shimmering halo around each pitch. Underneath, a shakuhachi flute breathes long winding phrases, as if the tower itself is exhaling ancient secrets. And then there is the taiko drum, deep measured like a heartbeat echoing through stone. Why these instruments? Because the Bell Tower is not just a building, it is a shrine, a place of pilgrimage. In real-world Japan, many Buddhist temples and Shinto shrines use similar instrumentation during rituals. The koto and shakuhachi are not just exotic sounds to Western ears, they carry centuries of spiritual weight. By embedding them into the Bell Tower's theme, The composers, Go Ichinos and Junichi Masuda, gave Ho-Oh's domain a sense of timelessness. You are not a modern trainer climbing stairs. You are a pilgrim approaching something that existed before your culture, before your language, before even the idea of Pokémon battles. But the music does more than just sound old. It tells a story. The melody of the bell tower is built on a pentatonic scale, a 5-note pattern common to folk music across Asia. This scale has no semitones, no sharp edges, it floats. It suggests a world without conflict, a golden age of harmony. Yet beneath that peaceful surface, there is a subtle undercurrent of melancholy. Certain chords linger just a beat too long. A single note from the shakuhachi hangs in the air as if waiting for an answer that never comes. That, I think, is the tower's memory of the fire. The brass tower burned, and 3 lives were lost. Ho-Oh restored those lives, but the bell tower remembers the embers. The music accepts the sorrow, transforms it into beauty. Now leave that high place and descend. Travel to the far edge of Johto, across the ocean, to the Whirl Islands. Here the world changes. The sky disappears. You are in a labyrinth of caves and saltwater currents, and the music that greets you is utterly different from the bell tower. It is lower, darker, more circular. Instead of a koto's bright pluck, you hear a deep, resonant string instrument, perhaps a bass shamisen or a bowed cello. The melody moves in slow arcs, like water circling a drain. There is no flute here, no airy breath. Instead, the dominant sound is a low, throbbing pulse, almost like a heartbeat filtered through stone. This is Lugia's music, and it is haunting in a completely different way. Where the bell tower theme reaches upward, toward the sky, the Whirl Islands theme sinks downward, toward the abyss. The traditional Japanese instruments here are used not to evoke temple bells, but to suggest something older. The deep currents of the sea, the primordial darkness that existed before life crawled onto land. Sure, a mouth organ often used in Gagaku court music might appear in some versions, but its reedy drones are subdued, almost swallowed by the cavernous reverb. The overall effect is one of isolation. You are alone, far from human settlement, moving through a place that is not meant for you. And yet, there is a strange comfort in it. The Whirl Islands theme does not feel hostile. It feels patient. It is the sound of a guardian who has chosen to wait, perhaps for centuries, until the right time to reveal itself. This is the emotional core of Lugia's presence in Johto, while Ho-Oh's domain resonates with the joy and sorrow of resurrection. Lugia's sanctuary resonates with the stillness of a being that has withdrawn from the world. The music does not beg you to stay or leave. It simply exists like the tide. Then, there is a third piece of music, one that does not belong to a location but to an event. It appears when Lugia finally rises from the depths, whether in the Whirl Islands or during the climax of the second Pokémon movie, The Power of One. That theme is often called Lugia's Arrival in fan circles, though its official title varies across soundtracks. Whatever you name it, its emotional resonance is undeniable. The piece begins with a low, rumbling percussion, like thunder rolling across the ocean. Then a French horn enters, playing a broad, heroic melody. It is not the skyward melody of Ho-Oh. It is grounded, weighty, almost sorrowful. As the theme builds, strings join in, ascending in long sweeps, and the brass section swells until the whole orchestra is pressing forward. And then it resolves, not with a triumphant crash, but with a quiet coda, as if the storm has passed and all that remains is the calm. Why does this theme strike such a chord? Because it is not about power for its own sake. It is about arrival after endurance. Lugia has been hidden, waiting, guarding the world from storms it could not prevent. When it finally appears, the music acknowledges the weight of that responsibility. It is not a celebration, it is a release. Many fans describe feeling a mix of awe and relief when this theme plays. The sense that something terrible has been held back, and now it steps forward to help. The composers achieved this by allowing the theme to breathe. There is no frantic pacing, no synthetic urgency. The melody repeats, but each repetition builds on the last. It mirrors the act of a large creature rising from deep water, Slow, inevitable, unstoppable. The traditional Japanese instruments are not present here. This is a full Western orchestration, but the philosophy remains. The respect for power held in reserve, the patience that knows when to act. Together, these three pieces, the Bell Tower's sacred prayer, the Whirl Island's patient dark, and Lugia's arrival theme, form a triptych of sound that defines the Johto legendaries better than any words could. They teach us that music is not decoration. It is a direct line into the soul of a place, a creature, a story. When you played Pokémon Silver at night as a child, headphones on, diving into the Whirl Islands, the music you heard was not just a set of notes, it was a door, and on the other side of that door stood something ancient, waiting for you to find it. What then of the future? If Ho-Oh and Lugia are the guardians of Johto's past and present, there are other protectors whose stories have yet to unfold. They stand at the threshold of what comes next, not as echoes of fire and storm, but as something entirely new. Their time is coming, and when it does, the music will change again. The music of the towers fades, but its echoes carry forward into the modern age. Those haunting melodies from the Bell Tower and the Whirl Islands were composed for a world that once felt ancient and sealed. Yet, the legend of Ho-Oh and Lugia refuses to remain locked in the past. Instead, it continues to evolve, appearing in new forms and new media, reaching audiences who may never have played the original games. And in doing so, the myth itself transforms, adapting to the changing landscape of Pokémon itself. Take, for instance, the anime series Pokémon Journeys. Here, the legendary birds are not merely relics of Johto's history. They appear as forces of nature, woven into a modern story about global discovery. In Journeys, Ho-Oh and Lugia are not confined to a single region or a single encounter. They are encountered by Ash and his friends in ways that expand the original lore. Ho-Oh appears in a fleeting, almost dreamlike moment, soaring over a rainbow, a reminder of its first appearance in the very first episode of the anime. That callback is deliberate. It reinforces the idea that Ho-Oh is the eternal watcher, a being that appears when the world needs a sign of hope. Lugia, meanwhile, is given a more active role. In one memorable episode, a Lugia is seen protecting its offspring, a young Lugia that has become separated from its parent. This storyline introduces a deeply personal, familial dimension to the Guardian of the Sea. It suggests that Lugia is not just a solitary deity but a parent, a protector with a lineage. And that raises a profound question. If there is a baby Lugia, then there must be at least two Lugias in the wild. The mystery of whether more than one of each legendary exists has persisted across generations, but Journeys brings it to the forefront. The games, too, have embraced the idea of multiple encounters. In recent titles, Ho-Oh and Lugia have taken on roles as what players now call world bosses. In Pokémon Go, for instance, they appear in 5-star raid battles, requiring dozens of trainers to coordinate their attacks and bring down these titans. The concept of a raid battle transforms the legendary encounter from a solitary scripted event to a communal challenge. You are no longer alone in a cave, saving the game before a battle. You are part of a crowd, united against a common foe, and that foe is no longer just a static sprite with fixed stats. In Pokémon Go, Ho-Oh and Lugia are given movesets and CP ranges that vary, making each encounter slightly different. They become living, breathing entities that exist in the world, not just in a cartridge. The same applies to Pokémon Sword and Shield's Dynamax adventures, where players can seek out legendary Pokémon from past generations, including these two, in a shared raid-like environment. The term Apex Legendaries has emerged in the community to describe these heightened forms. Beings that are not only rare but also possess unique moves or abilities that set them apart from their standard counterparts. In Pokémon Legends, Arceus, while Ho-Oh and Lugia themselves do not appear, the concept of Apex Pokémon is introduced with massive alpha versions of regular species. That idea of a superior, more powerful variant whispers back to the legend of the original duo, suggesting that even among legendary birds, there may be individuals that are stronger, older, more ancient than others. And yet, for all their presence in modern media, the central mystery remains. Are there multiple Ho-Oh and multiple Lugia, or is each a singular, unique being? The games have never given a definitive answer. In the core series, you catch one of each per save file, but the anime shows a Lugia with a child. The TCG features cards like Lugia X and Ho-Oh X, implying multiple specimens exist. The lore of the Burned Tower speaks of a single tragic event that drove Lugia away, but that does not preclude other Lugia dwelling in other seas. Similarly, Ho-Oh's resurrection of the legendary beasts is a singular act, but the Phoenix myth often involves cycles of rebirth. Could Ho-Oh have died and been reborn elsewhere? The mystery is part of their allure. It allows each trainer to imagine that their own captured Ho-Oh is the one true Ho-Oh, while also accepting that other trainers might have their own. This ambiguity is not a flaw, it is a feature. It keeps the legend alive, open to interpretation, and ever growing. As we look ahead, the question of balance becomes central. Ho-Oh and Lugia are not merely creatures of power. They are symbols of opposing forces that must coexist. Ho-Oh represents renewal, the rainbow after the storm, the rebirth that follows destruction. Lugia represents restraint, the silent guardian who holds back the storm before it can destroy. Theirs is a philosophy of equilibrium, a dance between creation and protection. In the next chapter, we will explore that philosophy in depth. How the idea of balance shapes not only their myth, but the very fabric of the Pokémon world. The future of these guardians is not just in new games or shows. It is in the enduring truth that light and shadow, sky and sea, hope and memory must always find a way to stand together. From the world bosses of modern raids and the apex legendaries that dominate the present-day battlefields, we now turn inward to the very heart of what makes Ho-Oh and Lugia more than just powerful creatures. The previous chapter showed us how their legend continues to evolve in the era of Pokémon journeys, how they've become global anchors for cooperative play and mythical reverence. But to truly understand why they endure, we must strip away the game mechanics, the movie cameos, and the Pokédex entries, and return to the soil of Johto, because buried beneath the layers of time and reinterpretation is a single, profound message: the philosophy of balance. And that philosophy is not about compromise or lukewarm neutrality. It is about the necessary tension between life and restraint. It is the understanding that a world cannot survive on creation alone, nor can it be preserved by endless withdrawal. It needs both the destructive storm and the rejuvenating fire. Think for a moment about the Ecruteak myth, the foundational story that binds these two beings. A lightning strike, a fire that burned for 3 days, 3 innocent Pokémon dead in the ashes. In the aftermath, 2 divine birds made 2 very different choices. Ho-Oh descended, touched the charred remains, and breathed new life into them. The legendary beasts were born, Raikou, Entei, Suicune, each carrying a fragment of that renewed flame. It was an act of sheer, unbridled creation, a phoenix-like refusal to let tragedy be the final word. Ho-Oh looked at a disaster and answered it with rebirth. That is the first pillar of Johto's core message. Life in all its defiant, irrepressible glory. Fire that rises from the ashes, a rainbow that arcs across a storm-soaked sky. But Lugia made the opposite decision. After the brass tower burned and the innocent perished, Lugia did not descend to restore. It withdrew. It retreated to the depths of the sea, to the Whirl Islands, to places where human hands could not reach. Some interpret this as fear or shame, but if we listen to the myth more carefully, we hear something else: restraint. Lugia chose not to intervene, because it understood that some wounds must be allowed to heal on their own, that some forces, if unleashed, would only multiply the destruction. Its power is legendary, wings that can summon storms, a roar that can shake the ocean floor. Yet Lugia keeps that power hidden, bound, silent. It is the guardian who says, "I will not be the one who decides your redemption." That is the second pillar, restraint. The wisdom to hold back, to protect by not acting, to let time and consequence do their work. Now, why does the world need both? This is where Johto's philosophy becomes not just spiritual, but practical. A world of pure, unrestrained life, of constant creation and rebirth, would be chaotic. It would be a forest that never stops growing, suffocating its own roots. Ho-Oh's fire, if always burning, would consume everything. But a world of pure restraint, of eternal withdrawal, would become stagnant. It would be an ocean that never moves, a storm that never breaks. Lugia's silence, if absolute, would let rot fester beneath the surface. The two forces are not enemies, they are complements. The fire needs the sea to cool it, to give it shape. The sea needs the fire to warm it, to stir it into motion. Without Ho-Oh's renewal, the world would forget that hope is possible after loss. Without Lugia's restraint, the world would forget that some things must be allowed to fade, to settle, to become legend. And here is where you, the player, enter the myth. In every generation, the story of Johto is not just about the birds themselves. It is about the one who walks the path between them. The player character, the silent protagonist who climbs the bell tower and descends into the Whirl Islands, who holds the rainbow wing in one hand and the silver wing in the other, becomes the mediator. You are the fulcrum upon which these two forces meet. You choose to seek out Ho-Oh to test your worth, to prove you are worthy of rebirth. You choose to reach Lugia to earn its trust, to prove you are worthy of its power. But the deeper truth is that by retrieving both legendaries, you are not just collecting trophies. You are reweaving the torn fabric of Johto's soul. You are saying to the world, I will carry both the fire and the calm. I will know when to create and when to hold back. The player's role is not to dominate these forces, but to harmonize them. This is the genius of Johto's design in the games. You cannot simply defeat Ho-Oh or Lugia in battle and call it done. You must earn their respect through a series of quiet rituals, ringing the bell tower, solving the puzzle of the Whirl Islands, proving your dedication through a long, silent journey. The game teaches you that balance is not a trophy to be captured. It is a state of being to be cultivated. And when you finally stand before Ho-Oh atop the tower, the music swells, the rainbow shines, and you feel the weight of that moment. Or when you face Lugia in the dark chamber beneath the sea, the water lapping at your feet, and it lets you approach because it has judged your heart, you understand. You are not just catching a Pokémon, you are being entrusted with a piece of the world's equilibrium. And so the philosophy of balance is not a lesson for the game alone. It is a mirror held up to our own lives. We all face moments where we must choose between creation and restraint, between lighting a fire and letting the silence speak. Johto whispers to us that both paths are sacred. The destructive storm is not evil. It clears the dead wood so that new growth can emerge. The rejuvenating fire is not careless. It warms what was cold and lights what was dark. The world needs the storm to remind us that change is inevitable, and it needs the fire to remind us that change can bring beauty. And we, like the trainer who carries both wings, must learn to hold these opposites in our hands without letting them burn us or drown us. This brings us to the threshold of the next chapter, because if the philosophy of balance is the heart of Johto, then what happens when that balance is tested outside the region? How do the descendants of Ho and Lugia, the lesser birds, the spiritual echoes, the forgotten legends, carry this message into other lands? The legacy of the birds is about to unfold, and it will reveal that the fire and the sea never truly stay contained. Wherever the human heart seeks meaning, the rainbow and the storm will follow. We've spent this whole journey exploring the delicate balance between life and restraint. How Johto's legend is not a story of simple triumph, but of a world that needs both the destructive storm and the rejuvenating fire to survive. That balance is more than just a theme for one region. It became a blueprint. The legacy of the birds is not only what they did in Ecruteak, but how their very existence rewrote the rules for every legendary pair that followed. Think about every legendary duo that came after. Reshiram and Zekrom, Truth and Ideals. Dialga and Palkia, Time and Space. Xerneas and Yveltal, Life and Death. Solgaleo and Lunala, Sun and Moon. Over and over, Game Freak returned to the same well they first dug in Johto, a pair of cosmic opposites, each incomplete without the other, held together by a story that feels ancient and personal. But what sets Ho-Oh and Lugia apart from all those later pairs is this. They are the most human-centric legends Pokémon has ever created. Their story is not about the creation of the universe or the fabric of reality. It is about us, about human ambition, human failure, and the chance for redemption. The lightning strike that burned the brass tower was a natural disaster, but the tower was built by people. The 3 Pokémon that died were innocent victims of a world where mortals tried to touch the divine, and the response of the 2 great birds was not to pass judgment from on high, but to act in a way that reflected our own capacity for both grief and grace. O saw the tragedy and chose resurrection. Lugia saw the tragedy and chose withdrawal. One turned toward humanity, the other turned away, but both were reacting to the same mistake. That is what makes them so beloved. They are not aloof gods. They are mirrors of our own best and worst instincts. When Ho-Oh revived the 3 fallen Pokémon, it created the legendary beasts. That act alone is perhaps the most direct intervention any legendary has ever made in mortal life. It did not simply restore balance to nature. It created new life from death, new hope from ruin. That moment echoes every time a player encounters Raikou, Entei, or Suicune running across a region. They are living proof that tragedy can be transformed into legacy. Lugia, in its silence, became the guardian of that lesson. It holds the memory of what was lost, and in doing so, it prevents us from forgetting. Later legendary duos often feel distant. Groudon and Kyogre are forces of raw geology and meteorology. Palkia and Dialga are abstract concepts, but Ho-Oh and Lugia feel like they could exist in our world. Their towers stand in a city that could be real. Their story is about a fire, a storm, and a choice. When you stand in the burned tower in the games, you are not learning about some ancient cosmic event. You are learning about what happens when humans break something sacred. And then you learn that even broken things can be healed. That is why they remain the most beloved duo in the franchise. Not because they are the most powerful, or the most mysterious, or the most flashy, but because their myth is the most human. Every legendary pair that followed inherited the structure of duality, but none of them inherited the emotional weight of a story that begins with a mistake and asks forgiveness. As we close this chapter, we are left with 2 birds, one carrying a rainbow, the other carrying a storm. They are not enemies. They are 2 answers to the same question. What do you do when the world you love has been burned down? One says, rebuild. The other says, keep watch. And between those 2 answers, the entire philosophy of Johto is held. But there is a deeper mystery beneath those waters. Something darker than the Whirl Islands, something older than the towers. That story waits for us at the trench, where the rainbow meets the abyss, in a place that holds the final secret of the birds, the rainbow's end and the deepest trench. That is where we will go next. Them now, 2 figures carved into the very bones of Johto's mythic landscape. One a flash of fire and rainbow against the endless sky, the other a silent shadow coiled in the deepest trench of the sea. And if the last chapter reminded us that Ho-Oh and Lugia are the most human of all legendaries, bound not to abstract concepts but to our own failures and hopes, then this final look at the Ecruteak legend asks us to sit with the full weight of that story one more time. Let us return to the towers, not as we might find them in a game map, but as mere dungeon maps or encounter zones, but as they stood in the earliest days of Johto. 2 spires rising above the misty lowlands, their bells and windows catching the gold of dawn and the silver of dusk. The bell tower, home to Ho-Oh, was a place of light and pilgrimage, its 7 colours shimmering in the stained glass. The brass tower, where Lugia was said to roost, was a bastion of strength and shelter, its walls thick with the resonance of deep water. Together, they formed a bridge between heaven and ocean, between the promise of renewal and the weight of restraint. And then came the fire. It began with a lightning strike. But the legend does not blame the storm. It blames the silence of the people who had stopped listening. The brass tower burned for 3 days. The flames rose so high that the sky turned orange even at midnight. And inside that inferno, 3 Pokémon perished. Creatures who had trusted the tower's protection, who had come to the city seeking sanctuary. That loss is the wound at the heart of Johto. Ho-Oh descended through the smoke. It did not speak, but the rainbow it left behind told a story older than any language. The phoenix touched the ashes, and from those ashes rose Raikou, Entei and Suicune, not as replacements but as transformations. Tragedy became purpose. Death became a trio of guardians that still roam the land, each one a question. Will you remember what was lost? Will you protect what remains worthy of the gift? Lugia, meanwhile, looked at the charred remains of its home and decided that the distance between humans and divinity needed to grow. It did not flee in anger, it withdrew in sorrow. The great bird that could calm the fiercest hurricanes chose to become the storm itself, not to harm, but to hold back the chaos that humans might unleash if they ever tried to reach too high again. Lugia descended into the Whirl Islands, into the black water where sunlight fades into memory, and there it remains, listening to the currents of the world, waiting for a time when trust might be rebuilt. That is the Ecruteak legend in its purest form, a story about response to catastrophe. Ho-Oh responds by creating life from death. Lugia responds by creating distance from harm. One says, "I will return." The other says, "I will protect from afar." Neither is wrong. Neither is whole alone, because hope is a bird in the sky. Something you catch a glimpse of on the horizon, a flash of colour after the rain, a promise that endings are not final, but peace is a guardian in the sea. Something that moves beneath the surface, steady and immense and silent, holding back the waves so that the shore remains safe. You cannot have one without the other. You cannot rebuild without both the courage to start again and the wisdom to know when to hold still. As we reach the end of this journey through Johto, think of all the paths we have walked together. We began with the simple story of 2 legendary birds, and we found ourselves unraveling the very fabric of how Pokémon mythology constructs meaning. We climbed the bell tower and heard the music of ancient instruments. We swam through the Whirl Islands and felt the pressure of forgotten depths. We saw Ho-Oh in the first episode of the anime, an unexpected promise that even the smallest beginning could lead to wonder. We saw Lugia rise from the sea in a movie that understood the cost of imbalance. We explored the symbolism of the sun and the moon, the prototype for every legendary pair that followed: Solgaleo and Lunala, Dialga and Palkia, Gruden and Kyogre. They all carry echoes of that original duality, the impulse to create and the impulse to preserve, the fire that illuminates and the storm that cleanses. But Ho-Oh and Lugia are the only ones whose legend is so intimately tied to human error. Their story is not about cosmic wars or alternate dimensions. It is about a fire that started because someone was careless, and 2 divine beings who chose different ways to heal. That is why they matter. That is why they shape every region, even when they do not appear. Every time a new generation introduces a paired legend, that duality carries the ghostly recalls the 2 towers of Ecruteak. Every time a Pokémon symbolizes hope or guardianship, it quietly bows to the Phoenix and the Leviathan. So here, at the end of this chapter, let the image settle. A rainbow stretches across the sky, and beneath the waves a wing stirs the dark. You have watched as tragedy became legend, and legend became a promise. The promise is simple. No matter how deep the trench or how high the sky, the world holds both a bird that will run and a guardian that will wait. We have finished our lore for Sleep journey through the Johto region. The towers still stand in memory, the beast stills run, and somewhere out there, you might see a flash of gold or hear the roar of a distant break. That is Ho-Oh and Lugia, watching over the story they began. The story we carry forward every time we choose to hope, and every time we choose to protect. Sleep well, knowing that the rainbow's end and the deepest trench are both under the same sky. What did you think of this journey? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this changed your perspective or taught you something new, consider subscribing for more mind-expanding content. And if you know someone who would find this as fascinating as you did, share it with them. These are the kind of conversations that matter.